The following is a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club. Players from 14 nations converge in St. Louis as USChessChamps.com presents the third annual Spring Chess Classic. Hello, chess fans, and welcome back to St. Louis for the final day of action for the 2019 Spring Chess Classic. My name is Ben Simon, and filling in for Grandmaster Aman Hamilton is once again Caleb Denby. Yesterday it was me, today it's Aman, but how do you feel being back in the studio for your second day?
It's great to be back. I'm a world-class substitute, so yes. I'll see what I can do. Trying to fill Aman's shoes this time instead of the host's.
Well, spectacular. Yeah, we'll see how that works, and if we do have a playoff later this evening, we do expect Aman Hamilton to join us, but this is a big situation. This is one of the most competitive classic events we've ever had because no less than 4 players can tie for first, in putting us in a potential 4-way playoff. Let's see how this stacks up with our standings in Group A. Now, coming into the round, 3 players tied for first, Nijnik, Robson, and Zhang. But then Arjan Tari of Norway has 4.5 points. It's important to note that Eric Hansen and Liam Lee coming into the round could not finish first because 2 of the 5-point players, Robson and Zhang, are playing each other. So still, those top 4 players, man, we could have a 4-way playoff, Caleb.
Yeah, we definitely can. And Arjan Tari, if he manages to win his game, he bumps up to 5.5. And so that's just 2 draws from the leaders, and we'll definitely see that playoff going on.
Yeah, it's important to note, Ray Robson got that victory yesterday over Akobian, which now propels him back into contention. All right, and in Group B, let's take a look at those standings. And what we thought could very well have been a runaway train at one point with Bai Jinshi. It's not so, but he's still the favorite to win. We have 2 players within reaching distance of the first place prize. Andre Barish-Pulitz looking to repeat as Group B champion, Caleb.
Yeah, and he was actually very lucky to get away with a draw from his last game. He ran into some serious trouble. So let's see if he can turn it around today, get that win, and maybe have a chance at catching up.
If you're just joining us for the first time, let's talk about the format. We're looking at two 10-player round-robin fields. The time control is game in 90 minutes for the first 40 moves, and then there are 30 minutes added on for the remainder of the game. There is a 30-second increment from the very first move, and the players cannot agree to draws before Black's 30th move has been played. And also, there is a potential for playoffs, and this could get kind of tricky, but I can mention it to you now since this is quite possible. If two players tie in a field, they're going to be playing a best of two, game in 10 with a 2-second delay. And if one person gets 1.5 points, it's over. But if it's tied 1-1, then they play a Blitz Armageddon, 5-minute versus 4-minute game where Black has 4 minutes, but the trade-off is Black has draw odds.
That's right, and so if Black manages to just draw that game, he will be crowned champion of the 2019 Spring Chess Classic.
Yeah, and I guess 5 versus 4 is the tipping point. That's where the chess scientists have said that it's
that's
even.
Generally what's been agreed upon. But I think a lot of players actually favor the Black pieces there. Might be speaking out of turn, but I know I definitely would rather have the draw odds than 5 full minutes.
Yeah, we take a poll, and I guess we get 50% on both sides. That's what we know the balance is. There have been 3 playoffs in the history of the seasonal classics before, but it's never happened between 3 or 4 players, and that's possible in Group A. 3 or 4 players, they will contest a rapid round robin. That's game in 10 with a 2-second delay, and this terminology, this wording is very important. It's not a knockout from that round robin. If one player does not emerge as the clear victor, then they play a blitz round robin. And if a clear victor from that does not emerge, then they play a series of Armageddon games.
That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I have to ask Tony Rich, what is the format for a series of Armageddon games? That seems kind of messy. But hey, hopefully we don't get there. If we do, it might be quite exciting to figure it out. All along the way, we would like to invite you to join us in the YouTube chat and check out uschesschamps.com if you're not already there. That is where you can see the digital boards and follow along with the entire event. Okay, Caleb, it's time. Let's look at the pairings for Group A. What's happening right now?
Let's see what we have going on.
Okay, so Aryan Tari versus Rustam Kazimjanov, Eric Hansen versus Benjamin Bach, Liam Lee versus Vasily Ivanchuk, Varuzhan Akobian versus Ilya Nizhnik, and Jeffrey Zhang versus Ray Robson. Now, 3 of these games are extremely important. The 3 games at the bottom are going to determine who will be the champion or at least make it to a playoff situation. As far as, I'm sorry, Tari versus Kazimjanov is not at the bottom.
Right.
That is our first key matchup that we're looking at because of Aryan Tari, who is within shooting distance of a first place score here.
Yeah, and going undefeated this tournament actually. Only seeing 1 win in the first round, but no one has been able to take a full point off of him yet.
First time matchup for these two. And up next is Varuzhan Akobian versus Ilya Nizhnik. And they've played one time before, but it wasn't in person. It was in the Pro Chess League 2017, and that game was a draw. Ilya Nizhnik, it's his time. Akobian is not within range of first place, but Nizhnik is going to have to perform and at least get a draw against Akobian in this one. And then finally, Jeffrey Zhang versus Ray Robson. Both of these players in the lead, 5 points, and neither has been, Jeffrey has not been defeated. Ray did suffer a defeat in the second round, and these players are no strangers to each other. Ray has a lifetime 1-game lead over Jeffrey, and they've had 3 draws. They've played before at Spice and, of course, the U.S. Championships.
Yeah, as 2 of the very, very strong younger players in the United States right now, they definitely are going to be seeing a lot of each other for the years to come, it feels.
Yeah. Let's glance at this game and see what the progress is like right now.
Absolutely. So what we've got going on here seems to have originated from, let's just go back to the beginning and see how we got here. So it came out of 1 knight f3, d5, d4, knight f6, c4, c6, And then Jeffrey actually decided to go for an exchange Slav, Ben. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with the exchange Slav, but it has quite a reputation, right?
Okay.
You know, it kind of has a reputation for not being the most interesting games. But, you know, the way Jeffrey and Ray have handled this has actually turned out, you know, to be fairly interesting. And I think there have actually already been some chances missed by both sides. So white just continues development naturally with knight to c3, knight to c6, bishop f4. Now this move a6, rook to c1, and bishop f5. And this was partially a reason for a6, is it indirectly helps defend this b pawn, Ben. And we were actually talking about this yesterday with Aman. But the reason it indirectly defends this pawn is actually seen a bit later. We see e3, e6, queen b3. And now the point of a6 is a little bit more clear. You know, black wanted to develop this bishop, but he wanted to make sure he had, you know, some defense for this b pawn left behind. And you might be thinking, well, a6 doesn't defend b7, but after knight h5, this pawn is actually not capturable. Well, actually, here it would be capturable for a moment because
Can you trap the queen?
what would happen on queen b7. So yeah, knight a5 is, you know, the classic idea. But while white still has this bishop around, you know, white can escape with queen c7 for the moment. But, you know, Jeffrey probably didn't like the look of knight takes f4, giving away his strong bishop, even though he does nab this b pawn. So instead of that, he just decided to retreat his bishop with, advance the bishop with bishop e5. Then after f6, he retreated back to g3. And now after knight g3, h takes g3, white's going to have some pressure along this open file. But of course, you know, black has grabbed the bishop pair, which, you know, GMs are very fond of, you know. And it's quite a strong thing to give up. So hopefully, you know, Jeffrey is going to try to make use of this h file to put some pressure on black. And now after bishop g6, now this pawn definitely isn't capturable because knight a5 would, in fact, completely trap the queen. Nowhere to go along the rank, nowhere to go along the file, nowhere to go diagonally. That's just a free queen, Ben.
Yeah.
So, of course, you know, Jeffrey, he's no slouch. He plays knight h4, kind of chasing this bishop around. Black plays bishop to f7, and now white plays this move bishop to d3. And this move actually gives black quite a lot of problems. You know, what would be the most natural move for you to play here, Ben? What do you think comes naturally as black?
As black, I want to attack the knight on the rim.
Yeah, so you might want to attack this knight. You might also want to develop this bishop, right? You want to get your pieces out. So you might want to play something like, I don't know, bishop to e7 or bishop to d6, right? Maybe bishop e7, eyeing up, you know, this knight in the future. But now white actually has a very interesting move in knight to g6. And now we really see the point of this rook on this open h file coming into play. This pawn is actually pinned, so there's no way to capture this knight. And if you were to move this rook away, of course, you know, h7 would fall. And this would be very good for white. But the thing is, you know, black really wouldn't have any choice here. Because if you capture this, you can actually just recapture back. After king f8, once again, this pawn is hanging. Maybe you want to capture with the bishop, maybe with the rook. But, you know, either way, that's just a free pawn for white. So there's actually some significant problems that black has to deal with already. And because of this pressure coming from knight to g6 or bishop to g6, black actually felt the need to play f5 here, which, instead of bishop e7, he felt the need to play f5, which really isn't a move you want to play as black. Partially because of the reason, because of the move that Jeffrey actually played in the game, which is simply g4. You know, black tried to close this diagonal to prevent knight g6, so white's simply going to get rid of his doubled pawn and try to open that diagonal again in the process. And after some thinking, Ray actually played g6 here, simply defending this pawn again. But after g takes f5, e takes f5, Jeffrey actually had a really good move that he missed here. And it actually comes through the means of a tactical shot later on. So, you know, white played g4 once, trying to open the diagonal. Black managed to keep it closed by defending with his g-pawn here. But he simply could have tried to open the diagonal once again with another g4 push. And of course, you know, the easy line to calculate is what happens if, you know, black tries to take. And when simply we can now take the pawn on g6. And once again, you know, h7 will fall, g6 has already fallen. This would be horrible for black. He can try to, you know, defend his pawn. but there's simply not enough defenders, right? We can just go ahead and break through and capture here. So that would be another way to win a pawn for white. So black would have to try to defend this pawn through tactical means. So do you have any ideas here, Ben, for what black might try?
To defend the f-pawn?
Yeah, to defend the f-pawn, more specifically, he's going to kind of remove an attacker, kind of the opposite of a remove the defender tactic.
How about knight b4?
Yeah, knight b4 is actually a key move in a lot of these positions. It's also part of the reason why taking on b7 wasn't always great, because sometimes this knight b4 move comes in, gaining time on the bishop, giving you time to attack this queen again. Here, though, the bishop could just retreat, and the knight might be loosely placed. The move I was thinking of was actually bishop to e7, hitting this knight, not giving this knight time to attack f5. And so Jeffrey probably thought, okay, so bishop e7, I would have to move my knight away, and then none of the tactics work. But there's actually the insane-looking g takes f5 here, when after bishop takes h4, Jeffrey can actually sack a full rook here by taking on h4. And after queen takes h4, now the point is clear after queen to b7. This would just be a fork of black's pieces. If you play something like rook to d8 or rook to b8, I'm simply going to take on c6, maybe king f8, and now play f6. And at the end of the day, black is an exchange up, but if we count the pawns, it looks like white has 2 pawns for it, and black's pieces are completely discoordinated. None of black's pieces are working together. This king is locking this rook out of this game. This queen is kind of in no man's land on h4. It could give a check, but simply king to d2, and white has nothing to fear. And this would have been just completely crushing for white. This would have been close to game over if they had continued down this line. But that would have required Jeffrey to see this crazy-looking gf5 with the idea of sacking this rook in h4. In the game, Jeffrey didn't see this, and he just decided, I'm going to move my knight away, anticipating bishop e7 perhaps. And this actually just gives black a chance to kind of escape with bishop d6. And once again here, he actually could have taken advantage of this weak b7 pawn by playing this move knight to g5. Again, all of white's play is centered around, making use of this open h file. It's what he gave up the bishop pair for, and so he really needs to make use of it, in my opinion. And if, of course, the queen takes, we fall into this same line with, queen takes b7. So this also would have been awkward for black, but instead Jeffrey just decided to castle, so kind of giving up all of his pressure on the h-file by removing the rook. It does get his king to a safer square, but it kind of lets black off with castles kingside himself. And now it's tough to find any sort of advantage for white, in my opinion. Black does have the 2 bishops, and yes, this bishop is not looking great for the moment, but maybe one day black will play f4, kind of break down white's center pawns here, and open up a diagonal as well as his rook. And so it's not going to be so easy for Jeffrey to prove anything in this game. Definitely some missed chances there already.
So this is the current position?
Yeah, let me just update my board. No, looks like some more moves have been played. So after castles, we saw knight e2, knight a5, attacking the queen. The queen retreated back to d1. He wouldn't want to put his queen on this open file, probably, just where it would get kicked around more. Queen f6 is played, and actually queen back to a4, now that this queen has left the d8 square. And this is kind of sending off some alarm bells. I hope we don't see a repetition of moves already, with something like queen back to d8 and queen back to d1.
Well, these players might be fairly comfortable taking a repetition in this game.
They might be, yeah, but they're going to have to be careful, because I'm sure Ilya is going to try to fight for more if he sees that he has a chance to walk away with clear first.
And I wonder how much that these players have gotten up from the board, and I'm sure they're quite often going to the other games and just kind of surveying the situation.
Definitely looking around. But the other big factor here is actually the clocks. These players are only on move 21, and they have to hit to move 40 before they hit extra time. And right down to 14 minutes for those 19 moves. And Jeffrey also down below 20 minutes for these, the next half of the first 40 moves.
Okay, well, let's stop by Group B and see the pairings over
Absolutely.
in our Challengers division. Now, 2 players can still finish in first, we know that, but the games going on are Nicholas Theodorou versus Hieden Steingrimson, Alexei Sorokin versus Sergei Ehrenberg, Alexander Mista versus Gregory Kaidanov, Denis Kadrich versus Andrei Barish-Pulitz, and Christian Kurilla versus Baijin Shi. And now we know those 2 last games indeed are the ones to look at. Denis Kadrich versus Andrei Barish-Pulitz. Barish-Pulitz trying to get that full point, trying to get up there and join Bai, but it's not going to be easy because all Bai has to do in his game against Kurilla is score. Just score anything against with Black.
Yeah, it's tough to touch that +4 score. You know, it's going to be really difficult.
Yeah. Top seed Bai. Let's take a look at his game with Black against Kurilla.
Absolutely. So it's actually been a day for the Exchange Slavs. This is our current position. You know, White has some pressure along the G file, but you know, Black is going to have some nice outposts for his knight, and if he can get his pieces coordinated, it's going to be good for him, I feel. Let's take a look at how we got here. Like I said, it's a day for the Exchange Slav. This time we reached it directly without, you know, developing the knights. Here's c takes d5, c takes d5, bishop f4, knight to c6, and now we see this move e3. So something we often tell beginners in the opening is you want to develop your knights before your bishops usually, right?
Right.
And Christian has kind of, you know, foregone this this statement, especially with this move e3 rather than getting a knight out. But there's actually a pretty interesting line that Black has if White isn't careful. Maybe the natural-looking knight c3 can already run into some e5 pawn sacrifices. And Black would have some really interesting ideas after those. So e3 is definitely the move here, because, you know, in this e5 sacrifice line, a very common idea is to push this pawn through to d4, kind of misplacing White's knight and already, you know, getting some pressure. So we see e3 instead, and this kind of, you know, puts a damper on Black's e5 ideas by controlling this d4 square a little more closely. So we do see e3, knight f6, knight c3, bishop f5. You know, Black developing this bishop early, this time without including a6. We see queen to b3.
Oh, we do have a result here. Sorokin and Ehrenberg has ended, and FIDE master Alexei Sorokin has the victory. Okay, in his final game, you know, Sorokin had norm possibilities. He was going for his 3rd Grandmaster norm.
Wow.
Oh, pardon me. I misunderstood. Sergei Ehrenberg has the victory over Sorokin. But Sorokin, the last seed in this field, B, was looking for his final Grandmaster norm. That did not play out for him, unfortunately, but it was nice meeting him.
Yeah, do you want to take a quick look at how that game ended?
Yeah, let's go and look at that.
All right. Looking at this final position here, it seems as though the White King is simply a little bit too unsafe. And White does have this, you know, advanced pawn in h7, maybe with some ideas on the Black King, but clearly it wasn't enough. And after White gets out of this check, I'm not even sure, you know, maybe there's some checkmating ideas, but simply, you know, Black can take this rook and then continue on checkmating White up a full piece. But how did we get here? So it looks like this bishop e5 move, and after queen to c2, we saw bishop takes b2, rook takes here, and oh, it looks like it's simply a blunder. Yeah, this bishop e5 move seems to just win the game, because after queen c2, bishop takes b2. You can't recapture this bishop because this leaves your rook hanging, but which is why, you know, White went for rook takes d8. But now, instead of simply recapturing this rook, allowing White to recapture here, Black can throw in this check on d4, which is incredibly awkward for White. You know, the Desperado might have continued with rook takes d4, but unfortunately for White, his king and rook are placed slightly awkwardly, and of course, the rook would fall in this line. So no way to save the piece for White. Kind of unfortunate for Alexei, but you know, a well-spotted tactic by Sergei Ehrenberg.
A nice in-between move.
Yes, an intermezzo of sorts.
And that tactic has like 3 or 4 different names.
Yeah, the Zwischenzug as well. don't know of any others to my mind, but
We can make more up.
yeah.
Yeah. Dipsy doodle.
All right, do you want to pop back over to the Baizhenji game?
Yeah, let's do that for a moment. Yeah, and then we'll look at our prize funds.
All right. So yeah, we saw the exchange off. I think we ended off around here. Both players just developing their pieces now. H3, rook c8, knight f3, b5. Black expands early on the queen's side, whereas, white might have had to awkwardly place his queen on c2, kind of opposing this rook, which is not ideal. So a3, preventing this move b4, which would attack this pinned piece. We see castles, a6, knight e5, h6, queen e2, getting this queen off of this open file. Queen to b6, connecting the rooks, and g4. So white's ideas are going to come from the king's side, he decides. He wants to expand over here, get a little bit more space, maybe launch an attack on the black king even, while black is busy expanding over here on the queen's side. So we see bishop e8, defending some of these weak light squares that were created by the move h6, g5, and h takes g5, bishop takes g5. Now the g file is open. We see queen to d8, king h1, knight to d7, black trading off some of these attacking looking pieces, knight takes d7, queen d7, and rook g1. And now this move f5, which is often a critical move for black when he's being attacked in structures like these. It closes off this powerful bishop. It opens up his bishop that was, well placed to defend these light squares, and it even gives this rook some space if it needs to come up or if he needs to defend the g pawn along the 7th rank. White continued with rook to g3, preparing to double. Black decided that this was the right moment to take off this extra attacking piece. And after rook to c7, again, putting more defenders on this g-pawn, as well as preparing to stack up rooks on this file later on. We saw rook to g1 and queen to d6. White continued with queen f3. Black, of course, placed his knight on this powerful outpost, attacking, white's weak pawns. White shuffles over even more pieces to the king's side, leaving this b-pawn in the dust. And, Christian seemingly doesn't care. He just keeps bringing his pieces over to attack the black king. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one here. Black has definitely broken through on this queen side. But if white can manage to, generate a devastating attack, black's going to be in some trouble. So definitely, all three results possible here. Although, to my eyes, I don't really see this attack working out for white at first glance. It seems as though black is kind of getting away with taking this pawn for free. His pieces are well placed to help defend his king, and so unless white can prove something pretty immediately, it's going to be tough.
All right. So let's take a look at what these players are fighting for. We're going to see the prizes doled out today. Here are the prize funds. First, the grand prize for Group A, $6,000. And for Group B, it's $4,000 with a total combined prize fund of $36K. Not too shabby. Now, in Group A, I do know that we have Aryantari fighting for just a playoff. He cannot win outright.
Absolutely.
And it looks like Kazimzhanov might have a shot here against him. So let's take a look at that game.
All right, so what do we have going on here? Looks like an endgame where white is simply up a pawn, but, at the expense of his king. He's made some weaknesses definitely around this king. He has no pawns on the second rank to help defend himself. He's pushed f4 and h4, which of course weakens this diagonal as well as this second rank. So, Rustam's going to have to take advantage of this weak king if he wants to stay in this game. Otherwise, this pawn on d5 is simply going to be very, very threatening.
Caleb, pardon me, just one moment. We need to go to Akobian and Nizhnik if we can. That game has just been drawn. And so Nizhnik has that magical 5.5 points. Mm-hmm. And if either Zhang or Robson can emerge from their game victorious, then that player will be the champion now. We do know that.
Wow. Yeah, so definitely those players will have taken note of this, and they'll realize that all they need is a draw to secure their place in a playoff. So that reality is coming closer and closer to the truth, Ben. We might see that three-way round robin, or even four-way if Aryantari can manage something in his game. Let's see really quickly how we achieved this draw. Looks like after queen takes b4, queen takes d6, material is even. And then what Black continued with rook to d8, and we saw queen e7 and rook e8, and a simple repetition of moves. Really quickly, if White captured what appears to be this free knight, it looks as though Black would have this rook takes a4 move, so material would stay balanced. Besides, maybe this extra pawn for White, although it seems as though Black's going to have some pressure here, and while White is untangling his pieces, for example this knight, Black might get his rook involved in the game, and this pawn would likely fall. So this is probably why VAR decided just to repeat the moves with queen to e7, and we saw this repetition ending in a draw. So a good result for Ilya, it feels. That 5.5, not guaranteeing him a spot in the playoffs, but just psychologically, if you're Ray Robson and Jeffrey Zhang, and you know that this draw gets me a chance to fight for the title, it's got to be tempting to just go for that draw. Let the opponent off the hook, maybe risk nothing, get your shot in that rapid playoff.
Yeah, at the same time, you got to imagine that Ilya he's fairly confident that
Yeah.
the Robson-Zhang game is going to be a draw as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go back to Tari and Kasimdzhanov, if you don't mind.
Sure.
That's where we were right before we saw that that game had ended in a draw.
Yeah, so White's king is definitely weak here, and you were saying there might be some tactical shot for Rustam. Were you, Ben?
I have not looked at the line yet, but I saw that the meter was like -7
All right.
for Rustam, so
All right,
let's find
so,
it.
yeah, rook fe8 was played, so this queen is going to have to move somewhere, and it looks as though part of the awkwardness is coming from this queen b6 idea. So if you imagine the white queen moving off of this diagonal, this would simply be a fork of White's king and rook, and so White's going to have to kind of babysit this diagonal for a while, and maybe simply that's just not doable, because if you play something like queen f2 or something like queen c5, it looks as though Black can just continue with this rook e2 move. And White's king is really, kind of hurting here. I don't see a great way to try and even prevent this mate. You are able to play rook to f2, but it looks like Black has a number of options here, not the least of which is simply rook to e8, preparing to take on f2 and play the other rook into e2. And Black controls this diagonal, so there are no perpetual opportunities or checkmate opportunities. Well, actually, okay. Maybe there are checkmate opportunities.
Oh,
to be
from
careful
behind,
with.
the inside.
I was going to say, there's no way to attack this king on this diagonal. But,
Well,
it
now
looks
that
like,
wouldn't be mate though, but is there a skewer looming there from that combination?
Yeah, so White would be winning here because after king g7, we can simply play this
Oh,
and
well.
take this queen. And I'm not sure this is completely winning, but this extra pawn would be pretty tough for Black to deal with, even though White's king still has some difficulties. Probably a draw would happen if this were to be played, although it looks as though there might actually be some checkmating plans from White. Regardless, Black doesn't have to allow any of this. We simply need to find a better move after rook f2 here, which is not the easiest task, but I think we're up to it. Simply queen to b1 is interesting, but probably not enough. Let's take another look here. So queen c5 is the move I'm predicting from White. Maybe something else might be played, but this one makes the most sense to me. Like I said, you do have to be careful of losing this rook. Something else Black can try is simply attacking this queen again, perhaps, forcing the queen to an even more awkward square. Again, you still have to babysit this rook. You can also go to some place like b5, but that allows queen d4 check as well. And already, you can just see, just by, if I don't hang any rooks, you can already see that, Black's pieces are surrounding this king, and it's going to be definitely be a hunt. And we'll just have to see if Rustam can find the most accurate continuation to really put away this game. It looks like Arjan is still considering his options here to see what he wants to do with this queen. He's likely calculating some of these same lines and seeing maybe they don't turn out so well for me.
I would like to go over to Group B and look at our second key matchup.
Sure.
Denis Kadrich versus Andrei Barsh-Pulitz. Barsh-Pulitz fighting to get into a playoff situation.
Wow,
Has
yeah,
to win.
so At first glance, obviously, white has this rook in exchange for that black knight sitting on g5, and it looks like white's going to be in for a very pleasant endgame.
Well, and especially look at the time here. Andre is down to less than a minute, and he has 10 more moves to go before time control.
Definitely a difficult spot to be in. To my eyes, this looks just completely winning for white. I don't see how black can hope to hold this endgame. You can fracture white's pawns with a move like knight f3, but after rook to d5, let's say bishop here, and rook to d5, this endgame is going to be very, very difficult for black to hold. Partially because of the strong pawn on f5, kind of putting a damper on this g7 f6 complex, but mainly because these pawns on the queen's side are going to be very difficult to defend. And after a move like rook to d7, I think one of them is already falling. There's simply no way to keep these pawns under control. Black can try and maybe launch this h-pawn, but it's actually quite easy for white to come around and make sure there's no funny business. And now with the ability to create a passed pawn, this endgame should just be completely winning, in my opinion.
Looks like he's going for that h-pawn a little bit early on. He went down to d8 and checked the king.
Yeah, that's certainly another way to go about this endgame. So let me just update this board here. So we did see that line I was mentioning with knight takes f3 and bishop e5. And he goes after the h-pawn directly, just ensuring that this h-pawn doesn't get anywhere. And this is another fine way to go about this endgame, is simply activating your king next. And the rook is just better than the bishop. That's just a fact of chess, and it should be a fairly trivial win, I think, for white in this endgame.
And if Kadrich wins, then we know immediately that Jin Shibai will be the champion.
That's it. That's it for this B group. It will be decided then.
All we have to do then is just wait for Bai to finish his game and then interview him. So, we've had guests on the show before who will lose their last game, still come down for the victory interview though. It's like, hey, I won the round robin. I'm the champ.
Yeah, certainly. So, feeling good regardless of the last round result.
So I failed to mention, I think, early on that Eric Hansen and Benjamin Bach had drawn their game in Group A.
Yes.
But also, there is another game in Group A that does not have first place implications.
Yeah.
But Liam Lee versus Vasily Ivanchuk is certainly worth looking at.
Yeah, this seems as though it's another crazy position. We've seen a lot of these games in this tournament where the black king is simply stuck in the center because he has no shelter on the king's side and no shelter on the queen's side. But it's a very strange-looking kind of fortress black has made here.
Is that a stable fortress right there, Caleb?
I'm gonna say it's pretty unstable, Ben. This knight is holding onto this rook. This king is kind of holding everything together himself, and these rooks are barely holding on to these pawns in this knight. A move like knight g6 looks almost completely winning, but fortunately this queen is holding on to this pawn, and like I said, this knight has this rook, and everything is just barely holding on here. We saw the move rook f2 from white, and queen c6 from black, and it's almost like black doesn't want to touch his pieces. Because, like I said, everything is just so shakily holding together that one wrong move and it's all over for black. That being said, I don't see immediately how to break through for white, which is probably why we saw this move rook f2, simply defending this b pawn. One thing white can do is probably play something like g4 here, preventing black from ever pushing this pawn. Not that he'd especially want to, but putting an even greater hold on black's position. Something like pawn to g5. Really eyeing this weak dark square here. It's going to be problematic for black for sure.
Could we pry the black king out of the fortress by playing something that starts with like knight f5?
Yeah, knight f5 looks like another reasonable move, with the idea of playing knight g7 and then attacking this king again. And off the bat, I don't immediately see how black's intending to deal with this, especially with the other option, knight d6 coming. Let's try something like You know what, Ben? I honestly couldn't tell you. This looks disastrous.
Right. Yeah. But it looks like Lee just actually pulled his e-rook back.
Wow, that's actually very interesting.
I
said,
is he going to stack it on F, or is
that looks like a possibility here? But another thing is, Black simply can't move, right? Black can't move any of his pieces right now. Maybe this rook can go somewhere, but that's not really going to help his situation with the king. Something like Queen G5 still keeps that king cut off, and there's really nowhere to go. So I think Le Quang Liam is simply taking his time here, not rushing things, but yeah, right off the bat, this knight f5 move looks extremely dangerous. I'm interested in what defense Black was planning if you were to see something like this in the game. Let's see how we got here really quickly, because that is a very strange position. So it came from another Slav, or well, kind of a Slav structure. White opted to fianchetto though. White chased this bishop around a little bit, and then we saw this move f4. So a common idea in these games is playing this f4 and White expanding on this king side, which it seems to have worked out for him well in this game. Black played a very interesting pawn sacrifice here, opening up the king's side for his rook, but giving up a pawn in the process. After rook g8, we saw bishop f4. And just going through the moves here, it looks as though, Black never intended to castle. He was just planning on leaving his king here for the whole game. But after this pawn on d5 falls like that, it's really tough for Black, because this d5 move is coming. Like you said, this knight f5 move might be coming. Pressure on f7 is coming. There's simply too many things for Black to try to hold on to. I really do think, White has a sizable lead in this game.
But at the same time, Ivanchuk's not going to resign immediately, probably. He's going to make
No, of course not. Yeah.
Lee prove it.
Yeah, and we actually see some more moves being played. So yeah, we saw knight to b6 from Black. But like I said, Black didn't really want to touch any of these pieces, because now this allows this knight g6 idea, because the knight is no longer defending this rook on f8. So now we see this pin coming into play. Black was quick to respond, though, with knight to d5, but simply queen f3, maintaining this pin. And I really don't know what Black intends to do about this f7 pawn, because you can't move this rook away. Because that's checkmate, Ben. That's checkmate.
Right. What do you do? Rook d7 now?
Yeah, I mean, rook d7, but it's giving up the exchange simply, and Black's actually already down a pawn in this position, so these endgames are not going to be favorable. Yeah. Unless he finds some way to tactically, save his rook here, I think this is close to game. Close to game.
Well, we certainly have had a good time watching Liam Lee in this event, and while he finishes in the middle of the pack, we hope to see him back after this tournament as well.
Very interesting chess this round.
Yes, indeed. Okay, and well, let's check in with Zhang Robson, which is like the key matchup of key matchups.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is the one that counts. Looks like quite a bit of progress has actually been made since we last checked in here. So we saw, of course, this position. White began re-maneuvering his pieces. And instead of queen to d8, of course, we saw knight to c4. Putting this knight on this strong outpost, a very common idea in these structures, and an idea we've actually seen a lot of today, is in these exchange Slav structures, this c4 square becomes a very nice square for this knight. Attacking these kind of weak pawns sitting on the starting squares for White. So White just defends these pawns. The knight drops back to a5. It seems as though Ray is eyeing a couple of repetitions here, but Jeffrey, Aman has been talking about it a lot. He loves to play chess. So definitely not going to see too many early repetitions out of him, which is why he went for this very interesting idea of knight e5, actually a pawn sacrifice. And now, because of this sacrifice, he's actually able to get his queen into the c7 square. He's able to infiltrate, now that this dark squared bishop is gone for Black. We saw queen takes c7 and rook takes c7. And now after rook c8, rook c1, it seems as though White is going to have the more active rook in this endgame, despite being down a pawn. And then from Ray, we saw the very interesting move, d4. So earlier on, we were talking about, this bishop might be a problem piece, but hopefully black can find a way to extract it, and this is just what Ray is doing here. He's extracting this bishop. He's giving up this pawn on d4 maybe, after something like knight d4, but he's probably gaining it back right away on the a2 square. So,
is it worth pushing the a pawn instead to a3 or something?
Well, that's not something you really have time to do, right? Because simply f takes e3, and after f takes e3, these pawns are going to be shattered for this endgame, and definitely too many weaknesses for white here. With that being said, it's kind of tough to find the move for Jeffrey here. Perhaps we're going to see some liquidation of material after something like b3 here, making a lot of threats, including something like knight to e6 and bishop c4. You actually can't take this pawn with a knight due to this bishop c4 check. So we might see bishop takes b3, and then after knight takes b3, well, this is interesting. It actually seems as though,
Get the fork.
You still get the fork anyways. So maybe this pawn on a2 actually can't be captured after knight takes d4.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, let me just update the position. So
is black in trouble now because of this?
Well, yeah.
Can we just take the knight on d?
Yeah, we actually see, Jeffrey thinking here. So maybe he's found this line and he's trying to go over, what he might be missing. I wouldn't go as far as to say black's in serious trouble because, white did sacrifice this pawn earlier, so black isn't down material just yet. But this knight is definitely sidelined, and if you're not able to take this pawn and get this b3 square, I think there's serious problems for black here in reorganizing his pieces. We might see something like bishop to d5 out of black here, kind of trying to, like I said, reposition his pieces. But it's kind of unclear to me if it's going to be enough or if, this weakened 7th rank. This is a common theme, today, is this f-pawn moves and the 7th rank becomes a lot weaker in every endgame. So it'll be interesting to see if, Ray can find a way to maneuver out of this or if, this a-pawn actually is uncapturable. To my eyes, I really don't see a way for black to get away with taking this, unless he's simply planning to leave his bishop here. But I'm not sure he can, stop rook c2 if that is the route he goes for. Maybe rook d8 here, and then this might be the complication that Jeffrey is still thinking about. Because if rook c2, there's always this bishop b1 move. So you can trap this bishop, but maybe it's not so easy to capture it.
We have a result in Group B. Nicholas Theodoro has fallen at the hands of Heathen Steingrimsen.
Wow, the Icelandic Grandmaster taking another victim in these final rounds.
Yes, indeed.
He had kind of a slow start to this tournament, but he's definitely picking up pace now with these 2 wins in the last 2 rounds.
So let's can we go back and look at the last few moves and see what exactly happened here?
So it looks as though white is down an astonishing 3 pawns, but in exchange, he is up in exchange and maybe has an attack on the black king. So this bishop is taboo because of rook d8 check, leading directly into mate after rook f8, rook takes f8, or queen takes f8. So instead we saw bishop g7, protecting this 8th rank. After queen f4, defending this bishop. We saw bishop c6, so black is saying, I have 3 pawns for the exchange. That's more than enough. I'm just going to trade off some pieces here and, get to this endgame. And then instead of allowing that, white actually goes for another sacrifice and plays bishop takes g6. Maybe, this bishop isn't capturable due to h takes g6 and queen takes b4, which is why we saw queen takes f4. But now after bishop f7, king f7, bishop f4, the material count actually is even pieces, and black is up 2 pawns, which makes me think I miscounted originally, and white wasn't actually up in exchange. Let's take another look. Counting is very difficult. So let's see. Yeah, white is actually down in exchange, as well as 3 pawns here, which is kind of insane. Which is why, after this trade of pieces happened, we saw rook g8, and pretty quickly, white threw in the towel, being down, let's see, now 4 pawns with no compensation.
So Steingrimsen, yeah, as you said, wins his last 2. Wasn't his best tournament. Very nice guy, though.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good guy.
Okay, Group B. Alexander Mista versus Gregory Kaidanov. Let's
right.
take a look at this game.
Let's see what's going on. Looks like we've got a minor piece endgame where white is up a full pawn, but his knight is slightly awkward for the moment. So yeah, definitely white's going to be the one pressing here. But he does have to be very careful because that bishop can kind of get nasty, especially with these pawns locked on dark squares on g3 and h4. So let's see, it's actually black to move here. So to my eyes, I'm wondering about this move, bishop e5, already just going directly after this pawn. It does let this knight out of its cage, but after something like king e6, already I guess we would see g4 coming, and maybe there's a bishop g3 here, but it's kind of tough to defend all these dark squared pawns for white, but it looks like he's barely holding on here with something like knight f5, and yeah, this would be disastrous for black. So attacking this pawn right away isn't going to work for black, so it's kind of tough to find a move. Maybe we'll see something like g5. It's a very common idea in endgames where you're trying to draw, to trade off pawns, just so you get closer and closer to that drawn endgame where there's nothing left on the board. So there's no possibility for promotion. Yeah. So we see this g5 move maybe, and white might continue like this and bring his king into the game. And already we see possibly black would be able to trade even more pawns off with something like h4. This is certainly how I would go about treating this in game, is just taking off some of these pawns, kind of breaking up this formation for white. So that there's less chances of getting the pawns rolling together, like you would see with a move like g4.
Right. Do have a result in. Liam Lee has defeated Vasily Ivanchuk. Ivanchuk has resigned. The house was crumbling.
Yeah,
for Vasily.
Certainly. That king in the center of the board doesn't work well. So let's quickly see how that game actually did finish up. So we did see your move rook d7, but like I mentioned, this rook is simply falling on f8. And after king takes f8, queen h5, queen b6, we saw queen h8 check, queen g7. The king tried to run away, but it found no shelter on the queen side either. Returned to his home on e7, and after rook f1, black simply resigns. There's no way to really deal with all these threats on the f7 pawn. If you move this king back, for example, to try to defend laterally, you'll simply run into this check, and the pawn will fall anyways. So he decided, enough was enough. It's time to throw in the towel.
All right. And as I look into the YouTube chat, you've got some fans, Caleb.
Some fans.
Yeah, they
all
said,
right.
no way is this guy only 2,000. And where can people check you out online?
Check me out online. Well, I definitely have some interesting classes and lectures out on the St. Louis Chess Club YouTube channel.
You don't say.
Yeah, so if you guys are interested in getting to the 2,000 rating yourself, be sure to check out the Road to 2,000 online. Weekly lectures every Wednesday night. Live streams, so I can actually interact with you guys there as well. It's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Okay, so let us continue with Aryan Tari's game against Rustam Kazimjanov.
Yeah, it's
now
interesting to see how this is turning out. Did Rustam find some accurate moves, or did he?
He's
kind of
finding
let it
some
slip?
stuff. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, rook to e8 and.
Yeah, so we last left off at rook f to e8, and then I was predicting a move like queen to c5, but he actually went with queen a3 instead.
Let's see if we can get the board up on the screen here. There we go.
Yeah, so rook f e8, and then of course I was mentioning, this queen can't go somewhere natural because of this queen b6 check, picking up this rook. So instead we saw, queen to a3, protecting this rook still, but giving up on this diagonal kind of. It's going to be dangerous. And so black, of course, does not want these queens off the board, so he played queen to d2. And this is setting up some very nasty threats. Earlier in my analysis, we were looking at something like the rook coming into e2, but maybe Rustam's idea is to bring the rook behind the queen, creating even more devastating threats of checkmate immediately. And part of the reason why I was expecting a move like queen c5 was because it kept an eye on this f2 square. So if we were to see a move let's just pass for white here. A move like rook to b2. With this queen on c5, we would be able to play rook f2 here, trying to, block off this second rank. But such a move isn't really possible with this queen sitting here on a3. So it'll be interesting to see how, white wants to meet these ideas. We might see this queen come back to c5 anyways. We might also see, I'm not sure, maybe something like queen f3. But once again, a move like this is already going to be really awkward. After rook f2, we can actually maybe just... There should be some way to win a rook here. I'm not finding it, but yeah, maybe just check and takes this rook.
And at this point for Tari...
So queen f3 would be a mistake, obviously, but maybe queen c5, controlling this f2 square.
Okay. If those rooks came down, though, if they came down to the second rank, is Black solid in that regard? Does he have to look out for those back rank mates?
Yeah, those same ideas. So maybe immediately he can't bring both rooks to the second rank, right? Because we saw this rook a8 and this queen f8 idea. But
well, I wonder if it actually even leads to a mate, or if the black king can escape somehow.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. But the thing is, it's almost not even necessary to bring down both rooks right away, because rook b2 is already threatening enough, right? You can't stop checkmate. If it was black to move here and rook b2 was played, there's no way to stop the mate. So white already has to deal with this first rook, and then once he brings one rook down, maybe the white pieces are going to be distracted and they're not going to be able to keep up these threats on the f8 square and the a8 square, and they're going to have to come back and defend the king, and that's when we might see that second rook come into play. And also, black can start doing things with check pretty soon, and that's when, white's really not going to have a chance to try and counterpunch on this king on g8. With that in mind, what is our current position here? Let's see. All right, so we do see rook f2. So, white's not giving black a chance to double in the second. He's playing rook f2 immediately. But now, I thought this left behind the first rank. Yeah, so we actually do see rook b1 being played. And now something like queen to e1, and you've controlled the second rank, but you've left behind the first. So queen h1 is simply a checkmating threat. And I really am not sure what white intends to do about this. Perhaps even queen to d1 is slightly more accurate, controlling this f3 square. But no, we actually do see queen e1 in the game. And yeah, looking at the players on the board, it looks like Rustam is ready to call it here. He's ready to just give mate and call it a day.
Yeah, if Tari doesn't call it, Rustam will call it for him.
Yeah, so king f3 trying to run away doesn't quite work. We see some move, probably
there it is.
Probably a queen e4, and then after a king up to g4. Let's try and find a mate here. It's not trivial. Look, I'm sure it's trivial for Rustam, but it's not so trivial for me. It looks as though something like h5, king h3, rook h1, rook h2, and maybe we would see a queen f5 move. And after a king g2, we might see rook h2, king h2, and now, of course, the second rook would come in with check, and we would find mate on the back rank, which that's kind of a long line, but actually a lot of those moves are quite forcing. And so did we see a resignation actually happen?
Oh, yeah, yes. The game.
All right, so that will be that for Arun Tari. So no chance at winning this Spring Classic anymore for him.
Right, and Rustam Kazimjanov, the 2004 FIDE World Champion, he finishes at -2, but it's his game today was strong enough to knock out Arun Tari, who finishes with an even score, 4.5 out of 9. And I mean, that tells you something about how close this tournament is with these lower scores, just such an even field.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a very even competition with a lot of incredibly strong players. Rustam, as you mentioned, FIDE World Champion in 2004. And
Big knockout.
To see him going -2 really shows you how strong this field is this year.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just to quickly mention, Rustam went for queen d1, which is a lot simpler than the lines I was talking about. After king g2, we would see queen h1 mate, And of course, if rook e2, simply queen takes, and it's checkmate. So mate in 2 is the problem here for white.
Well, now it comes down to one game in Group A.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Let's
And
head on
let's
over
check
there.
back in and see how they're doing. It looks like we've got an even more simplified endgame. White does have this incredibly far advanced b pawn, which is going to cause black some trouble if he's not careful. But black has this a pawn in exchange. Let's very quickly see how the material did liquidate. So we saw bishop takes a2. And instead of this b3 move, which kind of trapped the bishop, but there's no good way to attack it, we saw b4, forcing this knight away. And now, of course, takes, and that's how we achieved this even material endgame. Black played a5, but maybe this move was this move seems forced because this pawn is attacked twice. But it actually does give white this chance to play b5 and kind of push through first. So after a4, b6, we saw rook b8 played here on the board, and bishop a6, and this is the current position, which, to my eyes, I'm slightly confused for black here, because I'm not seeing a great way to prevent this pawn from advancing all the way up the board. Of course, the threat, if you simply bring the bishop back, I'm going to play rook c8 check after takes and takes. This pawn is going home. This pawn is going home, Ben. And there's no way to really stop it. You can try a3, but due to the unfortunate placement of your pieces, you actually cannot queen here due to this fork in the end.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, you can play a2. I can queen. I guess you can actually queen with check. Oh my goodness. So this would be a pretty crazy line here, actually. This might actually be a relevant variation because I don't see any kind of forks in the road for white here. I think this is kind of the line he would have to go down. Let's see. So we saw rook c. Let's just try and calculate this again. Rook c8, takes, a3, b7, and so a2 is the move I'm curious about here. I wonder if there's some bishop e6 check, maybe king g7. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Let's see what the players have done on the board. So we saw, so to prevent rook c8, we saw king g7 from black. But now this allows this move b7, and after bishop d5, let's see what Jeffrey has in mind here. Once again, there is this rook c8 idea, and I'm not sure what the plan is for black. I think he might just be giving up an exchange.
I don't think there's a way out here for Ray. Like we said, I mean, at first glance, the pawns, okay, you've got a pawn, I've got a pawn, both passed. But yeah, black just doesn't look like he has a future here.
Yeah, to my eyes, looks like Jeffrey inserted a rook c5 even. And now, of course, you can't take this pawn due to this fork. And if you try to stay on this diagonal, I can simply push you away again. And it seems as though Jeffrey's getting everything without giving up anything in this line. I really didn't see the immediate refutation of this bishop d5 move, but it feels as though there might be something lurking there that I just haven't caught on to yet. Maybe this is the problem. If you play a3, I can play this fork, and this is quite an interesting tactic, actually. Now if you were to take, I can push this pawn, and I would queen with check. And if you actually don't take, then I can, of course, take this bishop and stop your pawn just in time. So that might be the reason that Ray didn't go for this bishop d5 move. Interesting bishop e6 check right away.
And it's important to remember that if there is a winner here, and it looks like there's going to be one, it might be Jeffrey. That's a walk-off homer. They will win the entire tournament.
I don't see how Ray's going to get out of this one. I think Jeffrey's simply winning this endgame, and that will be it for the A group in the Spring Classic. We will have a champion.
Ilya Nizhnik has got to be close by watching this one.
Yeah, no doubt.
Hoping that Zhang messes up, but it doesn't look like he will. And if Jeffrey wins, he'll be the first two-time seasonal classic champion in the series history. Yeah.
A repeat? Would that be a repeat winner? Or did he win?
He actually won the last Spring Classic.
So yeah, the 2018?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, back-to-back champion.
Yeah. But I have my little records here. See, all the champions here of all the seasonal classics. This is the first seasonal classic that has had 3 editions. It's the first third annual one. There's only been
first
one
one of the
summer
year. So
Yeah. Well, sometimes the winter, they kind of mix them around. It's not even spring, right? Like, who's keeping track of these
we
things?
actually saw bishop e6 from right here. So he's trying to hold on to this c8 square. But it seems as though rook c8 is simply possible from Jeffrey. And then if we would just see a liquidation, this pawn is pretty far advanced, but white is in time to stop it. So I really think white's going to walk away with the victory here.
Something in Group B is kind of setting up some flags here.
What's going on?
Both Barsz Pulitz and Bai in their respective games are not doing well.
Oh.
If they both lose, well, then Bai wins still. He
Absolutely,
wins
yeah.
the field.
So what's going on in Bai's game? You
Yeah,
wanna
the
check
first
that
with
out?
Kirilla Bai, yeah.
Right, Christian having a lot of ups and downs in this event, right? He's played some very good games, and he's had some kind of heartbreakers, and he's had some miracle saves. We saw this rook takes f7, miracle save in round 7, I believe it was, where we had kind of written him off. He was down a full rook, but he somehow came back. But let's see what he's got going on here in this position. So it looks as though...
So white just captured the pawn on b4. Those pawns have been traded.
Oh, yes. So white is actually up a pawn here at first glance, and perhaps even more relevant than that is this king on h8. It's out of the game, it's out of play, and it's kind of being attacked.
Are you worried, though, about the pass pawn on b4?
Yes and no. I'm only worried it might distract me from checkmating the black king.
Okay.
I'm not worried about that pawn ever making it all the way. If need be, white can simply play knight f4 here. This bishop has to find a home, and I can place my rook behind this pawn. And it's going to be tough to advance this guy with my rook behind the pawn. As we always say, rooks go behind passed pawns. But yeah, I would also be tempted to just try and ignore this pawn and go for something immediate with king h4 and king g5 and really just coming after this king. Because if you were to just try to push this pawn, this is just forced mate, I believe. You have to come back to c8. Now let's see if there's a knockout blow anywhere here. Perhaps there isn't, but again, rook b7, and this pawn is going nowhere. So definitely white with all the chances. He can probably come around and pick up these pawns at his leisure. But I don't see Bai holding this, actually. I think this is going to be very, very tough. Very, very tough. See the position on the board. Christian is still thinking. They just hit that move 40 a couple moves ago, so they do have that extra half hour now. So definitely the position to take his time and figure out what he wants to do, how he wants to handle this.
And the other game in this field, which we're looking at, Kadrich versus Barsz Pulitz.
Right, yeah.
Let's look at that.
So yeah, you said Barsz Pulitz is kind of suffering here, yeah, and we do see he did go down in exchange, so let's quickly go back and see what happened. Oh yeah, we actually saw this position, so we knew he was going down this exchange, and looking here, yeah, simply, this bishop is not going to be able to hold against this rook. There are too many weak pawns. B6, f6, and h6 are all going to be weaknesses that white can attack. As well as this king. So we might see something like f5 get pushed, forcing this king onto some awkward squares, and then this rook pushing this king even further away, and then we'll see, the end coming. Just for example, if we saw a move like h5, or even, let's just play a passing move for black here, we would see something like f5. And now no matter where the king goes, there's going to be an annoying check, and the king is going to be forced to the side of the board, and already you see, black can't hold on to everything. If the king were to come the other way, we would see this other horizontal check now. And once again, the king's on the side of the board. I can bring my king around, and there's not going to be any way for you to hold on to this endgame.
All right.
So I'm predicting a loss from both of our leaders then, both Bai and Andre.
It has happened before. I said we've had the champ in here coming off of a loss, but yeah, it looks like the Bosnian champion Kadrich has Barsz Pulitz's number in this one.
Yeah, so we actually did see h5, and instead of throwing in this f5 move, white kept that square open for his king. And after a move like king f7, we might see something like Rook h8, simply attacking this pawn. And then after king g6, I really do like this f5 move. I think he should play it, but you know, he can do that at his leisure, I guess. Can Dennis Kadrick?
Big news in Group A. We've had material liquidated off the board. We need to go back to Jeffrey Zhang and Ray Robson.
So yeah, there's actually not too much to analyze in this endgame actually, because White does just have that extra piece. It's Jeffrey's turn. If he wants to keep this king out completely, he can play a bishop c4 here. If the king were to come to e4, the king can come to e2. And yeah, there's really no chance for black here, unless he manages somehow to take all three of these pawns, which is going to be, you know, kind of very difficult, obviously. But yeah, I'm predicting we might see a king e4 if in the case of bishop c4, and then maybe an f4 move here, and trying to get rid of at least one of these pawns. Could Ray Robson, and then if a3, maybe a bishop c4 check, and the bishop can guard this pawn as well as advance this pawn up the board. And once White has a passed pawn like this, it really is kind of just over, because you can waste time with this bishop, and you know, Black really, I don't know, Black doesn't have a chance here. In my
by
opinion.
wasting time with the bishop, you mean, you know, Black's pawns can only move forward. And
Yeah.
you're just using waiting moves, right?
So yeah, if for one thing, the bishop can control some key squares, can prevent the black king from coming to some key squares. But the other thing is, you know, of course, we talk about the opposition in chess. Let's see here. So already, you know, the black king is keeping the white king out, but White can pass, and then Black has to play a move. He can push a pawn forward, but then, you know, White can pass again, right? And we see that, you know, while White is doing nothing, Black is being forced to push his pawns forward. Although I'm not sure, you know, White would want to allow these pawns to get quite so far up the board, so maybe we would see something like g4 be played from the White point of view.
Okay.
I guess there are some complications to be careful of, because, you know, if Black does get a passed pawn on the other side of the board, White's pieces might get tied down, and we might actually see a draw. But I really don't see Jeffrey blowing this one. I really think he's got this under control.
If you've been following along at uschesschamps.com, you know that if this game ends in a draw, then both Jeffrey and Ray will play a three-way rapid round robin with Ilya Nizhnik, and hopefully that will decide our undisputed winner. But yeah, winner takes all in this one, and Jeffrey for choice.
All right, and then is this the last game in the A group?
That is the last game in the A group. We still have 3 games going on.
We just have our 3 key matches, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have some ones to watch. I don't know if anything has changed though the last time we looked at our B group games.
Yeah, it looks as though you know, Dennis is making quite a bit of progress here. He just played f5 check, this move that I've been talking about, and so this really takes away too many squares from this black king, and we will see this pawn drop pretty soon, as well as this h pawn. And like I said, there's just far too many weaknesses for Black. His pawns are separated. His pawns can't defend each other. This pawn on b6 is backward, you know, tying this bishop down over here, as well as over here, as well as on on the h file. You know, bishops are pretty good, but they're not super pieces. You know, they can't go all over the board all at once. So I think this one is definitely in the bag. This game, I think, still has quite a bit left to go. I think, you know, FIDE definitely has some chances to maybe not lose, you know, directly. Some chances to make some complications. You know, whenever there's a passed pawn on the board, you always have to be careful, right? Because those things can get going. They can get going running pretty quickly. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Christian wants to deal with this. He's been thinking for quite a long time now on this move. Somewhere close to, I think, like 15 minutes, but maybe closer to 10. But still, it's tough to see what he's really calculating here. Like I said, I think the simplest move is just a knight f4, hitting this bishop, preventing this rook from checking. And after this bishop moves, which it really can only go back to d1, maybe g6, but I don't think that's a great idea, tying down the rook. And then White has a couple options here, one of which is just attacking this pawn. if the pawn comes to b3, you can just take another pawn for free. And then this, I think, would also be a very simple way to kind of lock this game down. This b pawn does survive, though, so like I said, there's always going to be some complications, no matter how many pawns you're up.
It looks like Karilla is approaching by with king h4.
Yeah, this is the other idea that I talked about, right? So this idea of just bringing the king in and checkmating black, right? It's also a tough idea to stop. This king might also kind of fake black out. Instead of going for checkmate, he might just come take these pawns. Definitely a lot of choices for white here, a lot of ways to win, and probably Christian was just deciding between them. All right, with that in mind, let's see. Jeffrey's still thinking in this position, so I guess he's decided there's more complications than I was saying, which fair enough, because in my analysis, I was kind of talking a big game, saying, yeah, there's no way black can hold this, but I managed to run myself into some complications, if you're paying attention. Yeah. So let's see. How would you approach this endgame?
Bishop c4, then bishop a2.
Yeah, bishop c4 and bishop a2 was my immediate thought. Yeah. But, this king e4 idea, followed by something like f4, or maybe even f4 immediately, seems like it might be slightly problematic, just trading off some pawns right away. It'd be nice if we could run our king all the way over to take this pawn, but I'm not sure our bishop can kind of hold off the black king alone while we go over and waste a bunch of time doing that. For example, king f1 here, takes, if something like king e4, maybe king e2, and already something like h5. Of course, it'd be a mistake for black to play g5, and why do you think that is, Ben? There's a really great move for white here.
It's a mistake to play g5.
It's a very common idea in pawn endgames like this.
Oh, bishop skewer, d3, yeah?
Oh, okay, so I didn't even see that. There is the skewer in the position, though. But let's say, a3, I play bishop a2, and now g5. There's still a mistake here in the move g5. Of course, now you'd like to skewer, but unfortunately, you've allowed black to queen if you do this. So.
That's not a good one. Yeah. Is g5 a mistake here?
Yeah. A common idea in chess, which doesn't get talked about a whole lot, is kind of economy of pieces, right? Doing the most with your pieces, being efficient with them. So
what about g4?
Yeah, g4 is a very efficient move because all of a sudden, black's 2 pawns are being prevented by your 1 pawn, right? And this is simply just a great advantage to have. And now, of course, something like black would have to pass, and now this is where this bishop being able to waste time really comes in handy because this king is going to have to move around, whereas I can always pass when I need to and force you to go back. And so an endgame like this would be completely winning. But, a move like h5 would be a lot more tricky, preventing this pawn from stopping the kingside pawns from flowing. And, this might run into some complications for Jeffrey here if he allows these pawns on the kingside to get rolling.
We have a big announcement to make.
All
in
right.
Group B, Dennis Kadrich has defeated Andrei Barish-Pulitz, which means that the Group B champion is Bai Jinshi from China. And we will hopefully get to talk to him after his game is finished. I imagine he is on the road to, well, maybe not a place that he wants to be, but still.
Yeah.
You got to be happy you're walking away with $4,000.
That's true. That is quite a bit of money for a week and a half's work. And yeah, like the +4 going into the last round, it's really a sizable lead, and he's really earned it this tournament. This is the first game I think we've actually seen him in any kind of trouble at all. Yeah. He's really just had quick, simple games, not simple but easy to follow in the fact that he plays moves that make sense, and he kind of just outplays his opponents doing so. And when complications do arise, he's never kind of shied away from them, right? He's kind of taken them head on, and definitely proven himself to be better than his opponents whenever the situation arose.
While we are waiting for our remaining key matchups to finish, let's glance back at the Lone B non-key matchup right now.
There is
Mista and Kaidanov.
All right. Oh yeah, this one. So we did actually see this change in structure that I was talking about with this f pawn moving from f3 to f4. So this isn't really something White wanted to do. He kind of had to do it to keep this bishop from coming after these pawns. Yeah, we see. So if we were to see, a knight f1 here instead of f4, I'm interested in what Black's plan actually was. I'm not sure why f4 had to be played, because it's really not a move you want to play as White. And the reason for that is with this pawn on f3, you're able to play this move g4 at some key moment. And this move g4 gives you this passed h pawn to work with. Whereas now, after f4 has been played, this g4 move isn't really, available anymore. And it's this same idea of, being efficient with the pawns, This black pawn is stopping both of these white pawns in their tracks. And this pawn is stopping this pawn. So, Black is down a pawn, but, the way he's using his pawns is making it such that, White can't advance any of his. In addition to that, Black's king is slightly more active. It's got slightly more central control. And this knight is still looking, quite silly. It's tough to see how White's going to try to untangle here and try to win this game. Let's see the current position. It looks like, White has made some progress getting this knight out, but he's given up more squares with this king. So if he's not careful, we might see this king kind of come running. Of course, Black doesn't want to leave the king side completely unattended, but, there are some dangers here if White is completely careless with the queen side. One winning idea you might see is White has placed his pawns on dark squares, which is the same color as this bishop, which usually isn't ideal, but one advantage of it is that it forces this pawn to be on a light square, right, this h5 pawn. So we might see this knight try and maneuver itself somewhere where it can attack this h5 pawn, maybe seeing an f5 and then a knight to f4, really taking advantage of the bishop's inability to defend this pawn. With that in mind, it's going to be interesting to see how Mista wants to handle this position. He's also got a 50-minute advantage on the clock. So, Black definitely is going to have to be moving quickly and thinking on his opponent's time here. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult not to fall into some traps.
Anything new going on in our U.S. Championship rivalry in Group A, Zhang and Robson, to determine the overall champion?
Yeah, let's take another look here. It looks like Jeffrey is still thinking of this move, which
nothing different.
You really can't blame him. From what I've seen of Jeffrey's play, he's the type of player to, get to the critical moment. In this case, the beginning of this piece up endgame, and he wants to work it all out before he makes any decisions, which is a great way to go about this, because, in endgames that are this simple, the lines aren't entirely too complex to calculate. It's very linear. Black's going to have this idea of f4, and then he's going to want to probably try to push these pawns and trade them off for these pawns, right? He knows what Black's going to do. And so he's just thinking out in his head, what's the best way for me to kind of prevent these ideas from coming to fruition for Black? Yeah, and so he's just calculating it all out, I would imagine, which is a great way to play accurate chess.
I'd like to remind you, while we're waiting for some moves to be made in this particular game, the U.S. Championship does start in 10 days? Yeah, 10 days. March 20th is round one, Wednesday.
Is it March 20th or March 19th?
The 18th is actually the opening ceremony, and then there's like a community day on the 19th.
Yes.
And it's kind of odd. It's staggered back. But then the 20th is round one, and we're going to be seeing Jeffrey Zhang and Ray Robson in that field.
Yeah.
Of course, the U.S. Championship has become the strongest national championship in the entire world. We have Fabiano Caruana, who just challenged for the World Championship, by the way. The Grand Chess Tour champion, Hikaru Nakamura, and we have Linear Dominguez, who just changed his federation from Cuba to the U.S.
That's right. Actually, 5 players in the U.S. over 2,700 now, and with the addition of the current U.S. champion, Sam Shankland, coming back to try to defend his title against, like you said, some of the strongest players in the world.
And Aman and I were talking about, a couple days ago, Jeffrey's status as a dark horse, perhaps.
Yeah.
Where Sam was last year.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you've got these 5 players all over 2,700, and then lurking just behind them is kind of Jeffrey, right? He's kind of distanced himself a little bit from the lower half of the field, I would say, but he's not quite up to that 2,700 FIDE level just yet.
Right.
But, I mean, we've seen him beat Le Quang Liem in this tournament, another, fantastic world-class player, and I think, in my opinion, I think he's ready to take on some of these big names and kind of take them out.
Right. The A-Team will be producing that event. It all starts on March 20th at uschesschamps.com. It's a 12-player round robin. And I shouldn't fail to mention that the U.S. Women's Championship is happening at the exact same time. Nazi Pakidze will not be defending her title this year, but will it be Irina Krush regaining the title after like 4 years? Man, she used to win it every year. It's been so long now.
Yeah, no, of course the classic Irina Krush Anna Zatonsky combo have been dominating the championships for like something like I think 10 years. They
Almost
were
a
passing it
decade.
back and forth, and then all of a sudden in 2016 we saw Nazi take the first title away from them, and then in 2017 I think we saw Sabina Forger take that title, and then Nazi actually repeated her championship last year. And so it's been a few years now for those two players. So I'm sure they're hungry to kind of prove that they belong in those top 2 rating places in the United States, and that they deserve to be known as the best female chess players in the United States.
It's interesting. I was looking at the rosters for these 2 fields, and in both fields, with the exception of Dominguez, all of the players have played in the respective national championships before. Now, look, Dominguez is a world elite player, so
Yeah, I mean,
he has an asterisk next to his name.
He's no stranger.
It doesn't matter. None of these guys and girls are strangers to this big event, and they're going to be coming hungry, that's for certain. Okay, now back to our games.
All right.
Anything yet? Well, by the way, we're going to be with you until the end.
Yeah,
we're going to be with
going.
you until we have the champs determined, until we have those interviews. And it looks at this point, we do have a move. Jeffrey has played F3.
All right. Interesting to see that move. So, well, yeah, this is actually just in anticipation of F4. I actually like this move a lot. Kind of crazy that I didn't come up with it myself, because it makes so much sense once you see it. So Black wants to play F4, trading off pawns. F3 gives him this extra option of playing E4, keeping pawns off the board. If you think you're going to be tricky and try to queen, I can simply come back. And now I actually have a great outpost for my bishop on D5, if need be. So instead of giving the Black king this tempo, I might simply just play bishop B7. Or, well, no, I can't do that. Yeah, so just bishop C4. And my bishop's fine on D5. It controls this. It helps defend this pawn if I ever need it. And this Black king can't go too far, of course, because then I can just start pushing my own pawns. Maybe not immediately, due to some strange fork here, but simply like bishop A2, and this king would have to come back now. But yeah, this is a great way to handle this endgame. I think Jeffrey, once again, I've been saying it a lot, but now it's becoming more and more clear that Jeffrey really is the favorite to win this endgame. I really don't think Ray can hold this. So yeah, after F3, I guess let's try and find some ideas for Black here. He might try and push this G pawn now, and like I said, just getting these pawns further down the board so that they can start creating threats. It's really the only way I think Ray can generate any counterplay here. But as the time ticks on, this white king's going to activate itself. White's eventually going to coordinate his pieces, and yeah. For example, if something like this were to happen, White's going to try to be creating a passed pawn here, I think. And so let's try and find some way for him to make that a reality, right? Of course, Black's not going to want to play F4, because it does give him this passed pawn. But it's tough to entirely prevent it, I think. Let's see. So if it were White to move here, what do I want to play?
What does G3 do anything?
Yeah, G3 is an interesting waiting move. If, something like H4 were to happen, that's my only kind of concern here. I guess, we could take this, and then actually just bring this king over. And I think this would be quite good for White here. I'm not sure, though, if we can actually win this pawn, which is kind of incredible. Because if I were to play bishop F7 here, trying to prevent this king from defending this pawn, I could play king f6, and then I would have to retreat this bishop. I guess there is this f4 idea with a bishop f7. Oh, looks like we have a result.
Kirilla has defeated Bai Jinshi.
Wow.
But, you know, it's not such a bad deal for Bai Jinshi, who has solidified his championship victory in Group B. So we'll be talking to him in just a few minutes.
All right. Yeah, it's actually a very interesting way that Christian did find this mate here.
Let us take a look at that.
Yeah, I was talking about maybe doing some kind of king g6 idea here, with the idea of bringing this rook to the 8th rank. But the way Christian handled it was actually very nice. It's a very common mating pattern. I think it has a name, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But it revolves around bringing this knight back into the game. And after knight g6, White's simply going to bring this king to h6 and this rook to g7. And that will be checkmate. This knight covering the king's 2 flight squares and the rook covering the rest. So no way to stop that for Bai Jinshi, but like you said, a very good tournament. He ends up +3 despite losing in the 9th round, and definitely happy to take home that first place prize.
And shout out to, not just the 2018 North American champion, Bai Jinshi, who now is the Group B Spring Chess Classic champion, but also Christian Kirilla for that great game. Kirilla, of course, is going into the fall as the new coach or the coach of the brand new,
right.
I should say, Mizzou chess team.
It'll definitely be interesting to see what he does with that program. Even more stellar chess programs coming to St. Louis. It's nice to see.
Well, at least in the area. Mizzou is about 2 hours away, but on the very edge of the metro area, it's only about 1 hour.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's not far.
So yeah, I mean, it's just Missouri is a great place for chess, I guess. One of the strongest states in the country.
All right. Well, let's see if anything else has happened in. Well, I know Mista and Kaidan is still going on in Group B, but our big matchup. I don't want to miss anything. I don't know if we will though. Zhang versus Robson.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at that.
I think they're taking their time here.
Okay.
Like I said, at the beginning of these endgames, that's when these strong players with the crazy ability to calculate and to visualize, they kind of see everything through to the end before they make any decisions. So I'm sure Ray was considering this f3 move, and he's just deciding the best way to try and create some chances to trade off all these pawns to get that drawn endgame.
We'll take a look at that in just a moment. I'm going to bow out because Bai Jinshi is here for his championship interview.
All right.
So I'll be back in a moment.
Okay. So yeah, again, looking at this endgame, I keep saying I think that Jeffrey Zhang's going to win it, but it is going to be really tough to find a way to create a passed pawn. That's really what Jeffrey's looking to do here. Let's see. One idea I think might be to bring this king around. Let's just play a few moves here. And then, sorry, not king d2, but maybe king d3. And maybe an e4 push. And this would be definitely an interesting way to create some chances for white. Black obviously doesn't have to be quite so cooperative, but this is one way I kind of see this game ending, is with this pawn becoming passed and kind of getting through to the ends. Let's take another look at this game that Christian just played with Bai Jinshi. And yeah, let's go all the way back to the beginning maybe. And let's see. It was an exchange love, like we talked about. And all right, I think we're about ready here. We have Bai Jinshi joining me. Thanks for coming in and joining me. Not such a great last round, but definitely a phenomenal tournament, and you definitely should be walking home happy with the first place title.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the tournament in general? How do you think it went?
Yeah, this is. I think I was a bit lucky at some games, and I won this. But for the first 5 rounds, I played very well. But then it's 3 draws and a loss.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah, I felt like we were looking at your games throughout the whole tournament, obviously, and we thought that you were never really in any danger in any of your games, up until today, of course.
Yeah.
And so did you ever feel like you were being pressed or were under any pressure throughout the tournament, besides this last round?
I don't know how to say. I think basically it's
So yeah,
Sorry.
no, you're totally fine. Yeah, definitely some tough competitors though, right? You know,
Yeah.
you definitely had to fight hard to get those points that you got.
Yeah.
Definitely not trying to say anything about that. But what do you think of today's game?
Yeah, I
what do you
think
think
my
went wrong?
opponent played very well today.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a great opening preparation.
Gotcha. So do you want to take me through it here?
Sure.
Where were you
No
out of
problem.
prep?
So I didn't prepare this line today.
Okay.
Yeah, so 95,
Yeah.
Queen A4, Bishop D7, Queen C2, E6, Bishop D3.
Yeah. So this is all pretty well known theory, right? And then
Yeah, I think
this
so.
H3 move. Is this still theory? This one I wasn't as familiar with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know this move.
Okay.
It's prevent 95.
Of course,
Rook
to
C8.
save the biship. So yeah, Rook C8 on the queen.
Yeah.
Knight of 3.
B5, Queen A3. Yeah, actually, now I'm not sure about castle and A6 idea. I think the most solid move is Knight C4 here, but
okay.
maybe White has some advantage.
Right, and why would you say that? Why does White have an advantage here?
Yeah, because there's no weakness for White,
Okay.
He can improve his position slowly, just
Right,
like Queen
yeah.
E2, Rook C1.
Yeah, just Queen E2, Rook C1, and castling himself maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, castles instead. White simply castles, right?
Yeah.
You played A6,
Yes.
dealing with this pawn. Knight E5, and so yeah.
Yeah, I think here maybe Bishop E8 is the best option.
Instead of H6.
I'm sorry, H6 first.
Okay.
Then Queen E2, Bishop E8 here.
Okay.
Yeah, and threat to play Knight D7 next move.
yeah,
Actually, that's not a threat, but
Okay.
just want to play Knight D7.
Right.
Let's change the E5 knight.
Sure. Yeah, just get this strong piece out of here.
Yeah, and Queen B6, that move.
Mhm.
Later, my queen is out of play, so I
Okay.
have to back to D8 again. So
right.
I think this is the best move.
This might be the
bad
moment
move.
where things started going wrong. Okay, so yeah, Queen B6. I guess were you anticipating this G4 push already, trying to open the king's
Yeah,
side?
this is a good move.
Okay, so you did go with Bishop E8, right?
Yeah, and my opponent said maybe here H4 is better than G5, but I'm not
okay.
sure.
Yeah, it
think-
certainly seemed to work out well in the game. Did you think maybe just too many pieces got traded after G5? 'Cause,
Yes, maybe, but
yeah.
I think G5 is good enough.
okay. Yeah, because I did notice it gave you this Knight D7 idea, trading off more pieces after Queen to D8.
Yeah.
Maybe was that what he was worried about, or was there something else?
Yeah, I thought after 97 black should be fine, but still, after some moves, I realized that black has a serious pressure.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So we saw this pressure on the G file, right?
Yeah, maybe I could improve somewhere at Rook C7, Queen D6, but I'm not sure what should I do.
Yeah. It seems tough, right? Just have
Yeah.
to deal with this pressure on G7 the whole game.
Yes.
And find a way to improve this bishop, right? But yeah, so we did see things go wrong eventually. But I did want to get your thoughts on the rest of the tournament still. So were you keeping a close eye on Andrei Vershbolet's game today to see what was going on there? Because he was the only competitor, of course, that could catch you in this
Yes.
last round. So
When I'm about to lose, I just keep attention at their games.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any thoughts on the tournament in general? Any games that you thought didn't go as well, or games that you're particularly happy with?
Yeah, I'm happy with my game before. From the first five rounds, and after even round 6 and round 7, I both have great chance to win. But
Right.
yeah, I think I should keep keep playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I choose sometimes super passionate. Maybe
Right.
that's not a good thing.
Already with the breakaway score, you were away from the pack already, so just taking some draws to kind of secure the tournament win maybe. But yeah, I don't think anyone can blame you. I did want to get your thoughts on this endgame with Jeffrey Zhang here.
Okay.
So we just saw
I think
this
he's
F4 move get
completely
played.
winning for white.
Yeah, he's definitely taking his time though. Any chances for Ray to try to hold this? Any way to trade off some pawns here, or is this just kind of a dead loss? Do you think?
I think no, I didn't see a way for black to draw here. Because that's not the H pawn. If H pawn is there, black can sacrifice everything, and if there's no pawn,
ending up with the wrong color rook pawns, of course, the classic way to try and draw this.
Yeah,
with that, how is white going to win though? What's the winning plan here?
this position.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I think both e4 and king f2 is winning. It seems, but
Sure.
I'm not so sure.
So maybe e4, and then how does white eventually push further though? How does he get this pawn up the board, or how does he stop this a pawn?
I think black is going to play g5, h5, and g4 maybe in this position, and try to create a new pass pawn.
Right.
But there's some problem for white. So maybe king f2 is simplest.
And then do you think we'd see a trade of pawns, or maybe just g5?
I think maybe g5.
Yeah, this was the problem I kept running into. Is I kept saying it should just be completely winning, but then it's
still white has to play. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
So maybe some chances for black to draw.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. Well, congratulations again. It was great having you here in the studio. Spring Classic champion. How does it feel?
It's a great tournament.
All right.
I feel very nice here.
We're glad to have you at the club, and we'll hope to have you back here again soon.
It's my pleasure.
So congratulations again. Thanks for joining me here in the studio.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Again, that's Baijin Shi talking with us after his tournament victory, champion of the 2019 Spring Classic B Group. And so that does leave us with just these last two games going. This game with Jeffrey Zhang and Ray Robson, of course, going to determine the A group's fate. This is the current position we have on the board. We did see this king f2 move that Bai suggested, and after a3, bishop c4 to stop this pawn. And white is just up this full piece, but it's not so easy, apparently, to find a winning plan. I thought it might just be my failing, but turns out even some good chess players are having some difficulty finding a way to break through here.
Right, and it really gets me thinking, Caleb, that this might be one of those situations where if you're on uschesschamps.com and you see the chess 24 meter and you're like, oh yeah, Jeffrey's won, is the engine fooled?
Well, you can never really trust what an engine says here, unless it says something like 000 or something like plus 99. Because in reality, those are the only two correct evaluations. An evaluation like plus 3 here doesn't really make any sense, because either white's winning or he's not, right? There's no kind of in between. There's like plus 3 worth of chances here. So either white's going to be able to queen this pawn or he's not. And so if Stockfish is saying something like plus 3, then that means it doesn't know either. It just sees that, okay, white's up a bishop, white's plus 3. It's kind of as simple as material count sometimes. Like Bai was saying though, this g5, g4 idea, with h5 included, just trading off these pawns, it's kind of tough to prevent. And it'll be interesting to see what Jeffrey comes up with here. It seems like Ray's play is going to be very natural as the holding side, right? You just want to push these pawns. It's kind of what I've been saying. But I really can't come up with it for Jeffrey, if I'm being honest with you. It seems absurd to have this extra bishop and not be able to handle these 3 pawns, but Maybe some difficulty. Maybe some difficulty.
Well, let's talk about our situations here, because if one of these players wins, of course, they are the Group A champion of the Spring Classic. But if this is a draw, then the players will go to a three-way playoff with Ilya Nizhnik, and that's going to occur at 5 p.m. Central Time, just about 2 hours from now. It should be done within an hour, but they're going to play a three-way rapid round-robin with a game-in-10 control. And if that does not determine an outright winner, then all three of them will then play a blitz round-robin.
Right.
And then if that does not determine a overall winner, clearly then they will go to a series of Armageddon games.
So just to clarify it with that, Ben, you say if the rapid round robin does not determine a winner, so that could mean that only 2 players are tied and 1 player is trailing, but then that last player would get another chance, right, in the blitz round robin?
Yeah, it's really important how it's worded. The regulations aren't posted on uschesschamps.com, but it's using the same regulations of the Winter Chess Classic. So if you go to that event, you can read them for yourself on uschesschamps.com. The terminology, very important. If it does not produce a winner, then the 3 of them will go on to the next stage.
All right.
So there you
So
go.
maybe we should hope Jeffrey doesn't find a way to win this game, because that sounds like some exciting stuff.
So we get to see the
Ben.
chaos.
That sounds entirely exciting.
Yes.
Rapid round robin.
Let's check in with our YouTube chat. They've been very active today. Christian Kurilla, who may be the actual real Christian Kurilla, says,
I believe it.
Where's Aman?
Where's Aman?
Well, Aman has other duties right now around the club, but rumor has it that if we go to a playoff, he will be joining us.
That's right. I think he will be available, and
Yeah.
so that's the last you guys will see of me, unfortunately.
I would like to get the band back together for one last time. Aditya Chandra says, hello, Ben and Caleb. Hello, Aditya.
Hello, Adi. Good to see you.
Joshua Postuma says, Robson has been a defensive wizard this tournament.
That's true.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, he's really held some tough positions, and he's managed to turn a few around, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't think any wizardry Ray's pulling off here can compare to the wizardry of our own Christian Trilla in round 7. Finding multiple stalemate tricks in order to save that game down a full rook is really something to see.
Patrick Daly is kind of joining in on what we were just talking about with the computer evaluation. He says, as far as this position, Leela hates it, Stockfish loves it. And, it's either a win or it's not.
That's true. There's no in between here. That's something nice about Ungames is, there's somebody's right. Somebody's right and somebody's wrong. There's no opening evaluation. White is slightly better here. It's you're winning or you're not.
And unfortunately, we don't have 10 piece endgame table bases.
If only.
Yet.
If
No.
only.
Do
If
not
only we
have-
had those 32-piece databases. That would be the one I'm waiting for.
Yeah, we might be waiting for a while. Okay, well, let's look over at Group B, Alexander Mista and Gregory Kaidanov. That's our only other game still happening.
Yeah. So the last game for Group B, as this other game is, of course, going on in Group A. White has made significant progress here. We do see Black still trying to hold on, using these 2 pawns to stop White's 3. But it's going to be tough to see what Black can come up with here. Something White can try, maybe immediately, maybe later on, is going to be this g4 break to try to shake loose some of these pawns on the king's side. Of course, Black would want to take this pawn, and after knight takes, now the idea for White is going to be kind of driving this king away and then pushing through with one of these pawns. And if White can achieve this passed pawn, then he's likely going to be winning. Just like in this other endgame, all White needs to win is just make a passed pawn and be able to push it down the board. I almost think this one is slightly going to be more simple for White to try to win. Not to say that it's a definite win here. I haven't calculated it out to the end, but it looks as though it's not going to be too difficult to make this passed pawn. And once he gets that passed pawn, it's really going to be tough for Black to hold on. We might see something like bishop d2. Then after knight h6, again pushing this king away, we would see maybe king g4. But I've run into some trouble here with my knight. So maybe it's not as clear how to get this king up to g4. Maybe I would have to play king e4 instead. But yeah, now this pawn is also being left behind. So always these technical problems when you're trying to, of course, defeat a very strong grandmaster. They find all these little ways to just make everything annoying, right? Nothing is ever as simple as it seems.
Well, I think your knight h6 and then king g4 plan would still work. I mean, if the bishop, you could bring the king up to g5, right, and protect it.
Yeah, we might run into some issues there, actually. King g5, maybe this bishop takes f4 move might be working.
You take back, is it all still good, right? I mean, do you have enough time to go and eat away the other pawns on the queen side?
I don't know. You can't go right away because you have to be careful, otherwise black's going to queen. Yeah. I think simpler for white is actually going to be this knight e3 move here. I'm pretty sure this king and pawn endgame would be completely winning due to f5 here. You can't play g5 because white would just queen, and if you take, my king is going to be faster than yours. Just barely. And so, of course, that means black can't trade here, and then after something like king f6, we could actually see, white make some advancements with this king. Maybe come and take these pawns on the queen side. Either way, still some ideas for black here. It's not trivial. But we do actually see this g4 move on the board. So white is angling for positions like this, and we'll see what he comes up with here. I think we see, pawn takes and knight takes both on the board. So it's going to be interesting to see what black comes up with, how he tries to keep these pawns from getting rolling, and how white tries to keep these pawns under control and maybe make a passed pawn or go after these queenside pawns. Both seem like viable plans. To my eyes.
Okay. Well, before we talk about some great upcoming programming on the St. Louis Chess Club YouTube channel, let's glance back at our big one.
Sure. All right.
And see if anything has happened. And
it looks like no moves have been played. No moves.
Absolutely.
Right. We are inching closer and closer towards the time when the players won't have the ability to stop making moves. With Ray only with 8 minutes left, and Jeffrey sitting on a cool 16. So I really do think that plan that Baizhen Shi was mentioning with this g5, this h5, and this g4, that's going to be the way for black to continue here. I guess Ray is just considering, what the best order to push these pawns is in, or maybe he's just thinking, all right, I know what I'm going to do, but I want to have a plan for the future. I want to know what white's going to do. I want to be ready to kind of just blitz out the rest of this endgame if need be.
The heat could really be turned up on this in a second, Like
yeah,
let's just give it like another half hour, and then it'll be wow. Okay,
yeah, that's true. Moves are going to start flying. So let's try and make some predictions here. Okay. I really do think we're going to see a move like g5 or h5. I'll start with g5, for example. And now, like I said, the onus is really on Jeffrey here. He's got to find a way to break through. And maybe one problem that Ray's finding with g5 is something like g4, trying to prevent this h5 move. Again, stopping 2 pawns with 1. But I'd be interested to see this endgame, actually. I'm not sure this is what Jeffrey wants to go for, because it does give him this backward pawn, and that means you're going to have to trade even more in order to make any progress. So g4, probably not the idea. Maybe just bringing this king around, but once again, this plan is difficult to stop. It seems as though eventually we're going to have to play this e4 move that Baizhen Shi was shying away from at first when he was giving us his his take on this endgame. But yeah, if I'm being entirely honest, I really don't see it. Really don't see it. Let's go ahead and try e4. Now if we see h5, maybe white can waste some time here. We might see g4. And if white isn't careful, we might see something like this happen. And then, of course, h4. And if this king ever strays too far away now suddenly h3 will come through, and g2, g1. And so this is kind of what black's aiming for, I think. It's kind of like a fortress. because, you know, this
Well,
bishop,
at this
of course,
point, the king would stay tethered to g2, and then the black king would come in and just go back and forth with the white bishop in the on the queenside corner. Is that right?
yeah. So of course, you know, black really can't try to make any progress here because if this black king strays
yeah,
away,
okay.
you know, we'll queen. But yeah, I really don't see a way for white to try and make any progress here. If you try to play, let's say, king d4, king f1, king here. Maybe, I mean, like, the only thing would be, let's see, let me just maneuver my way to this position. The only thing would be to try to replace this king with this bishop, but there's no real way to achieve that, because as soon as this bishop comes here, you know, this pawn can always try and queen once this bishop, you know, vacates this diagonal. So if something like this were to occur, I think this is just dead drawn. So Jeffrey definitely really does have to find something here. Again, this move g4, I really don't like it due to this happening, but maybe this does give more chances for white to try and break through. We might see something like h6, and after a pass, you know, now white can suddenly try and make some progress here, right? Black might be able to trade off another pawn, but in my opinion, what's going on here? All right. Yeah, I don't think this is enough. I think this endgame is drawn, this specific position we have on the board.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of be expecting Jeffrey to be in the tank here, thinking about these ideas. I wonder what Ray is worried about that's stopping him from just going for this g5, h5, g4 plan. With that being said...
And now Ray's down to 4 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not ready to give up for white just yet, because it really is annoying. It's annoying that I'm up this full bishop, and I can't find some way to break through here.
Okay, and there is h5.
Yeah, h5 on the board. So very similar idea. He still wants to play g5, g4. Probably g3, I think, is a fine idea, because I think that position is definitely drawn. I'm not sure if that's the idea Ray has in mind, but that'd definitely be what I was thinking about. One idea I haven't mentioned for Jeffrey is this g3 move. This might be interesting. And so the difference here from a move like g4 that I was talking about is that it wouldn't leave you saddled with this backward pawn. Now that the pawn's on h5, though, of course this would be different entirely. But a move like g3, kind of keeping your pawns fluid, is kind of a benefit here in these endgames. We might see black capture one of these pawns. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe just g5 instead, trying to keep the tension. But of course, you know, white always has this option of just kind of passing with the bishop. So we might see actually maybe a bishop a2, king f5. Let's see. I'm gonna triangulate with my bishop. So bishop e3, king f5, and then maybe like a bishop b1, keeping this king out of f5. And now, you know, black kind of has to make a decision here. He can't really back off, because then Jeffrey can capture here. And with these two pawns, I think that should be enough to win. Because the way these endgames kind of work is this pawn is worth one of these pawns, right? You can always force this bishop away and then take one of these pawns, you know, if need be. But you can't really take both pawns, right? You can imagine, like, so...
But the pawn on h5, does that make a difference?
Yes and no. You can imagine something like h4, king g2 happens, right? And now, like I said, this pawn is worth one of these. You know, you can play this and come take this guy. But the thing is, it's not worth both, right? Because the bishop now has time to come back into the game. That's kind of what I was trying to say there. Is it gains you some time to play a2 and sacrifice that guy, but not enough time to take both pawns usually. So
that situation you think would be a draw? Or a win for white?
That final situation, this would be a win for white, definitely.
I'm not seeing it.
So yeah, king g5 defending this pawn. We would pass, and then simply f4. Takes.
Okay.
Let's go back here though. So of course, you know, black doesn't have to go away, but this might actually force black to capture on one of these two squares. Now let's try capturing on e3 for black. And now, you know, with this pawn structure, I'm really, again, not sure how Jeffrey wants to kind of break through here. Because if he's not careful, I think black's just going to play h4. And, you know, with only one pawn on the board, like I said, generally this pawn's going to be worth 1 pawn on this side of the board. He's going to be able to sacrifice this pawn in order to use his king to capture this guy. So if something like this were to happen, now I think this would definitely be that draw that we were talking about. Simply no way to break through for white, I think. So those are a lot of different plans for white in this endgame, but I can't find a win in any of them. Jeffrey, of course, a much stronger chess player than I, so maybe he'll be able to pull it off, but I gotta tell you, I'm really, really struggling to come up with anything for white here.
I think what we might end up doing is taking a break until there's some kind of a change in this game or
Sure.
a breakthrough or something. We'll get to that in just a moment. But if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you might want to open uschesschamps.com and see the board for yourself. Don't trust the eval. But if you're on YouTube, you also want to it's been a long day. You want to subscribe is what I'm trying to say. You want to subscribe to our YouTube channel
Definitely.
and join the 206,000 other people across the world that have made us one of the top chess YouTube channels in the world. And we are now doing something really exciting on the channel. We have begun to stream our lectures live, and it's been a process. It was very imperfect at the beginning, but now it looks pretty much like the edited product.
Yeah.
So you've done 1 or 2 live lectures?
I think I've done 2 now. One Road to 2001 I was also filling in for
Right.
Amon, I believe. But
Yes.
yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's great to be able to interact with the YouTube chat live as the the lecture is happening, and yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think the YouTube we have moves.
We do.
So yes, I think the YouTube chat is also having a lot of fun with the live lectures.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
Jeffrey is actually committed to a very big decision after h5. He only thought for 4 minutes on e takes f4, and now he's actually going to get that pawn structure I was just looking at. After something like king to f5, if king to e3, we're going to get this 2-on-2 pawn structure. And yeah, this is one of the ones I couldn't find a way through for white. But I've got a lot of faith in Jeffrey Zhang. I think he might be onto something here, because if he thought this was just a draw, I imagine he probably would have taken more time on his last turn.
So this is just a faith issue here. You still don't see it.
Yes, blind faith in Jeffrey Zhang
Okay.
is my analysis and my evaluation of this position. With that in mind, okay, you don't have to be a great chess player to see. Raised down to 3 minutes. Clearly he was seeing something he didn't like. Jeffrey, again, only taking 4 minutes on making this super committal decision. I'm thinking he's pretty confident here. And even just looking at the body language, it's always tough to tell with Jeffrey, but he's always so composed. He's looking at the board. He doesn't seem to be, he doesn't seem to have any doubts about his position. And Ray hunched over, really looking for those moves. And so, yeah, blind faith in Jeffrey.
Well, Jeffrey's composure has really changed. Just a few minutes ago, he sat down at the board and he was rubbing his eyes like he just got out of bed. Like, oh man, you got to think. Maybe it was going through his head. I don't see a win, but now he does look more determined. He looks very focused. He's not rubbing his eyes. Couldn't be more different than how he was just a few
And you
minutes ago.
definitely see some uncertainty from Ray there, hovering over the king with his hand and then pulling it back.
This is what it's all about. It raised down to 2.5 minutes with the 30-second increment, of course.
Yeah, it's got to make a decision. And something about these endgames is also, one wrong king move can spell disaster. Simply, one square slightly misplaced. Maybe it's being on the light square and getting checked by the bishop, or the dark square and allowing f4 with tempo. But yeah, it's every move can be an important decision. So definitely some complications for Ray to be careful of here, which kind of explains why he's taking so much time.
Now, if someone's going to win, we know it would be Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any kind of possibility where Ray offers a draw?
Not really at this level, no. Even at my level, which is kind of, the still amateur tournament player, when you're in the worst position, when you know that you're holding the position, even if you think it's completely drawn, if you know that you're on the technically worst side, you never offer the draw. It's kind of impolite, because the understanding is both you and your opponent understand, the dynamic. You're holding, he's pressing. So when he's ready to draw, he'll offer you the draw. It's just kind of seen as impolite in my experience. But especially at this top level, I don't think that ever really happens.
Very well.
So the players still
I'm getting some news about the Mista Kaidanov game. The last game, yes, it is over. Alexander Mista has defeated the U.S. legend Gregory Kaidanov.
All right,
Let's take a glance at that game.
We actually saw both of these pawns break through. We were talking about maybe white making one passed pawn.
All right, let's get that board up on the screen if we can. There it is.
So, we left off around this g4 break. Again, breaking down this structure that was holding white's pawns back. And so after takes, we saw this pawn come under attack, knight e3 check, and king g4 to defend it. Now we saw king f6, and simply knight d5, and we saw this knight maneuver around, this king get in, attacking this pawn, and after knight to e5, once again, this pawn being on a light square leaves this bishop completely helpless to try to defend it, which is what led to knight takes g6, and after takes, we just see these two passed pawns. Definitely no way to stop those for black. And the game quickly concluded after h5, h6, and no way for black to hold on. So great showing from Alexander Mista. Really technically converting that endgame. It's good to see.
And now, since all of the games have ended in Group B, and in fact they were all decisive, let's take a look at our final standings for our Challengers Division. Well, we know that our champion is Bai Jinshi with a total score of 6 points, even though he couldn't walk away with the win in the final round. I wish we kind of would have opened up the other. I should have opened up the other round. So we were like, hey, show us your favorite game. Not today. We don't want to look at today.
Yeah, no, kind of an unfortunate game. Well played by Christian though, especially in that final positions there to find the mate. And Alexander Mista actually coming up to second place, only a half point behind with this win in the last round.
Yeah, and it's a half point behind. That's $1,500 less, but not too shabby for our Polish player who leaves with $2,500. And then third place, clear third, is the former B champion Andrzej Barosz-Polec, who leaves with $2,000. And the prize breakdown is available at uschesschamps.com. No one is walking away empty-handed, so it's worth everybody's time indeed. There's only one game left.
Only one
in
game.
The whole
That's
shebang,
right.
And it determines whether we're going to be here for about another 2 to 3 hours.
And I do have something funny I want to show you, Ben.
Go for it.
On this chessboard. So if we can get it back up on the screen. All right. So one way I think Jeffrey would have liked to see this game go would have been g3 check, king g5, f4 check, and then, Ben, I'll leave it to you to find the win here.
Okay, hold on.
I'm holding.
Okay, bishop e6, checkmate.
Checkmate.
Oh, it's deadly.
Yes. Would have loved to see that. But, of course, Ray's not going to do that, Chess is never quite as easy as we would like. So, of course, Ray doesn't even go to g5. He comes to f5 with this king. No chance to even check this king anymore. So, after that, we saw bishop a2 happen from c4. The bishop retreated to a2, and it's back onto Ray's move with only 2 minutes remaining. So he's really got to, he's got to commit to a plan and kind of stick to it now that he doesn't have much more time to really be thinking about these things.
Our chat, look, guys, this is awesome. We have almost 500 people watching right now, which is more than we had whenever there were more games going on. So they know it's heating up. And Arthur Tang says, Jeffrey's trying, but Ray is pressured to find the best resource. I think that is a fair assessment.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on Ray, whereas, Jeffrey can kind of take his time here, I think,
One of our most prolific commenters, Patrick Daly, says, I understand the fundamentals, but I don't know what to calculate. I don't understand the position.
Yeah, you and me both. I feel as though like I've calculated through every possible way for White to try to win this, and I'm just really not seeing it. But
Yeah.
you know, these endgames can always be tricky. You know,
It's a matter of faith.
I guess it's a matter of faith in Jeffrey. We do see G5 from Ray now, so he has committed to pushing this pawn one square further, and I think you know we might approach an endgame like this. Let me just play a move for White here, and then if H4 were to happen, I really think that this is a draw. So does White have any other options here after H4? Maybe we might see a G4 push, and after King F4, maybe a Bishop D5. Okay, maybe you know some clever way to pass the time. But yeah, I really think that this is going to be a draw, even after something like H3 and H2. You know, Black can play Queen. Takes. And now after A2, well, sorry, maybe White would defend this pawn. And then after A2, we would see this draw. So I really don't see any options here for White if he were to allow this H4 move to happen, which means, you know, Jeffrey, if he's going to do something, has to do something right now. And we actually saw King E3 played very, very quickly from Jeffrey. And so now with H4, maybe he's planning something that I don't see. I really think his only two options are to take and to push. I don't think anything else could really happen here. I guess he can play something like King to F2.
Ray has just played King E5.
Yeah, so King E5 not going for H4, which is interesting. I really thought H4 was a great way for Black to try to draw this. But maybe you know, keeping the pawns kind of in flux here is also going to be okay.
Bishop B1 by Jeffrey.
So we see, you know, the players may be gaining some time on the clock now.
Yeah.
Although, you know, the more I look at it, the further away this king's being pushed. You know, Jeffrey's almost kind of using some mysterious power to get this king farther away from his pawns.
Well, yeah, I can't go back to F5 anymore.
Yeah. Let's see.
Does
so Ray down to 40-something seconds. It's really tight here.
Does the king going back to F6 change anything?
Well, the thing about retreating that way is that, you know, maybe White can start playing things like King E4. And, you know, if White isn't careful, then, you know, this H4 move is going to come. But, you know, allowing the king up is always going to be a danger. Going to be a danger for you know, Black. We do see King F6. And now, of course, you know, Jeffrey will demonstrate his winning idea that no one here could see.
this amazing King E4, the very faithful move.
You start to wonder about F4 here as well. You know, if, you know, Black were to capture, White could capture back. And now, like I said, though, this H-pawn and this A-pawn together are going to force, you know, the king and the bishop, respectively, to kind of abandon this pawn.
Wouldn't you rather take on F4 with the king, though?
Takes with the king. Well, then, I was thinking H4 here for Black. And you have to play G4, because, of course, if you were to take this pawn, I can put my king here, and the game is a draw. Because this is the wrong color rook pawn for this bishop. But if you were to play G4, now I can push even further with H3. You can play G5 check, and then come take this pawn. But like I said, these two pawns together kind of force the white pieces to abandon this pawn. Kind of leave it in the dust. Although, all of a sudden, I think I might see the idea. This would be a very interesting way to keep this game going. And I think this endgame should just be completely winning. I completely missed this idea of bringing this bishop back to
that makes all the
this pawn.
difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, so
Wow.
with this new idea, maybe this is going to factor into the game somehow. We do see more moves being played. We saw this actually King E4 that I mentioned, and we saw, let's see, so King E4, King E6, Bishop A2, and now Ray to move. I would predict the king comes back to F6 if I had to guess.
Well, if you're one of the new folks who has just joined us, you're watching the 2019 Spring Chess Classic final round, final game, possibly going into playoffs, but we might have a clear winner here. Ben Simon and Caleb Denby with the call. Grandmaster Amon Hamilton will join us later for playoffs if necessary.
Yeah, and man, Jeffrey's really playing with a lot of confidence here. He's playing really quickly, but I tell you, I have yet to be convinced of the win here. So yeah, we do see king back to f6, and then let's see, bishop b3 it looks like from white. So, whoops. What happened here? Okay, here we go. So yeah, bishop b3, once again, using this bishop to mark time such that, the black king has to go even further away. And so it's starting to become kind of awkward for Ray. He does have to be quite careful.
Mm-hmm.
The further this king comes up the board, the more kind of convinced I am that Jeffrey knows what he's doing. We see king to g6 played. I would imagine king e5 is the idea now, but like I said, you do have to be careful of this h-pawn. Yeah, so we do see king e5. Well, black has to find a move. This is why I thought maybe h4 would be played right away, while the white king was still kind of passive back on f2. Now that the king's up on e5, I think white might have some more options. You can't play something like king h6, because of course king f5 then would just be completely winning the game. Of course king h6, king f5, and then you have no moves with the king, so you would have to push this pawn. And then of course, the white king can come and corral this pawn and be in time to defend this f-pawn. If we were to see something like h4, maybe we would see takes, and now of course white does have to kind of deal with this pawn. I don't think he has time to just run up the board. And so this is something that I was, kind of still thinking about. Maybe not king f6, maybe an h3 move. But now it seems as though it's just too late. It's just too late for Ray. So I'm not sure what the idea was, originally, to prevent this kind of endgame from happening. But it seems as though Jeffrey's just winning now. I think I'm finally convinced, both on the board and in my heart, that Jeffrey is winning this game.
Well, it's good to know. Yeah, king h6. Yeah, this.
So I think we saw king f5, king h6, and now once again I'm predicting Jeffrey will just mark time. And after h4, we will get this endgame that we were just looking at. And this is enough to win. This pawn is not on the h-file. If it were, it would be a draw. But of course, with this pawn being on f3, this is just basic stuff now.
And it breaks down. Actually, one of my favorite basic beginners endgames.
Yeah.
The opposition. Get the pawn to the other
Right.
side of the board.
And it's actually, almost simpler than that, right? Because usually in this endgame, let's just say black to move. Good to know. You get some position like this maybe. And let me put this bishop here just for a moment. You get a position like this, right? And no matter how hard you try, it's always going to end up being stalemate, right? With
That's
this
it.
king not moving.
I think they just shook hands, right?
Wow. All right.
The game is over.
I was going to mention, of course, with the bishop, you can win that endgame. Without the bishop, it might be a draw if the king's in front of the pawn. But yeah, Jeffrey Zhang, our champion now.
2 times over the seasonal classic Group A champion.
See Mike coming over, making it official. And,
It's a very important job right there. You got to put them on the right squares, those kings, or else it won't register the right result.
Yeah, it looks like Ray and Jeffrey are talking about the endgame now, seeing what might have been missed. It's like they're talking about an h4, if I'm understanding the hand signals correctly. But yeah, Ray looks kind of dejected. I think he feels like he might have missed something there. Gonna have to get Jeffrey's thoughts on that for sure, on this endgame.
Well, hopefully he doesn't feel too dejected because he won. He won the tournament.
No, sorry, I meant Ray feeling
Ray
slightly
Robson.
dejected.
Oh, okay. Ray. Okay.
Jeffrey just looks, kind of exhausted,
Right.
as one would be after such a marathon game.
Well, hopefully they can hurry their post-mortem up because we got to talk to Jeffrey Zhang, the 2016 World Junior Champion, still just 18 years old, and now the two-time Spring Classic Champion from the Dallas area, Jeffrey Zhang. So we'll talk to him shortly. But let's
Definitely a big name in the future of American chess.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for him at the U.S. Championship in less than 2 weeks. You never know what will happen at this event. Sam Shanklin won last year after a good showing also at the Spring Chess Classic. So
true.
Let's take a look at our final standings for our Masters division. No playoffs necessary. I can't say I thought this would happen coming into today. I thought, hey, probably a 60-70% chance we're going to playoffs. Not so. In the Group A, of course, we know that Jeffrey Zhang is the champion, and he leaves with $6,000. $6,000. And second place is Ilya Nizhnik, who had to sit on the sidelines and hope for a draw in this last game. That did not happen, but he still leaves with $4,000.
You have to wonder if maybe he wishes he had played slightly differently in his game now to try and really get some chances.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about the players walking around the hall and looking at those chances, but really that's all it is. You're playing with odds.
That's true.
And I'm sure that if you ask Nizhnik, well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but a lot of the players say, no, I wasn't banking on it. Whatever happens, happens. They're very zen about it.
Yeah, let the fates decide.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, of course, Ray Robson and Liam Lee leave with $2,500. Okay.
Certainly not a bad day's work.
No, not at all. Let's look at our chat while we wait for our champion to come in to the studio. Steamroller82 looks like he's just joining us for the first time. Hold on, that's the Ivanchuk? Like the legendary world-class player Ivanchuk? Yes, Steamroller82, welcome to the magic that is the Spring Chess Classic.
Absolutely. Great to have him here in St. Louis.
Yes, no doubt. Patrick Daly wants to know when Viewer's Choice can be viewed. Well, Viewer's Choice, you hosted it last week.
I did indeed, yeah. So that's Thursdays
Every
at
Thursday.
6:30, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's going to be live on the YouTube channel for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
So you can be sure to watch that every Thursday. Tune in, ask some questions live to the Grandmaster, and maybe he'll have something to say to you.
Yeah, we might actually kind of tweak the submission process. Right now, I'll be very candid with you. If you send a game to info@stlouischessclub.org, and Saint is spelled out. That's info@stlouischessclub.org. And our good friend Perry Colson will take your games and put them into a chess-based database.
Yes.
And then we look at them later. So right now, we don't have a protocol for looking at your games live, but that might change in the future once we become more accustomed to the process.
That would certainly be interesting, just to be able to link a game live in the chat.
Yeah, it'd be pretty chaotic. But right now, though, the process is we try not to look at the games. We disqualify some games because of volume if they don't have details.
It's true, yeah.
Your name, your opponent's name, if possible. Tell us your story. If you're working on the railroad in India, that happened one time. That's awesome to hear. We want to know about it. We want to know how you found our channel. We want to know who your favorite personality is. You say hi to Ben Feingold. Everyone always does, and he's not the one looking at the games. It doesn't matter. It's always a good time. So, yeah, check that out. Once again, the email address is info@stlouischessclub.org. Okay. Well, Caleb, it's been just a really fun time. And are you happy or sad we're not going to playoffs?
A mixed bag, I'm happy for Jeffrey, It's great to see him, doing well going into the U.S. Championships. I hope to see a great performance from him. Definitely, it feels like he's one of the top names in the future of American chess. So if he can start taking down these Wesley So's, these Hikaru Nakamuras, these Fabianos, really push himself up into the elites. And, it all starts here in the Spring Classic.
Very well. Coming up with the U.S. Championship, it's just 10 days away at uschesschamps.com. If you can make the trip to St. Louis for that event, there are some super fans that already do it. You'll be in good company. We're going to have live commentary at the Kingside Diner, right actually above us, and right next door to the chess club. And they have great food. They're going to have the best coffee in town, and for just $10 a ticket, I believe, a day.
Yeah, I believe actually one of the players in the Spring Classic will be doing that live commentary, if I'm not mistaken.
Who
I
is
think
it?
Eric Hansen will be doing our Kingside Diner commentary along with Alejandro Ramirez.
Dream team.
And yeah, it'll be a lot of fun to watch. You'll see a lot of these players back here again, competing this time for maybe an even greater title than the Spring Classic champion, the
Maybe.
US chess champion.
I don't know. Spring Classic's a pretty big deal.
It is.
Um,
it is. We've got Ivan Chuck here fighting for the title.
Yeah. And if Hansen and Ramirez aren't your bag, well, we do have a big screen next door at the chess club. You come by and watch the Jen Yasser and Maurice in Studio A for that commentary, and it lasts 11 days, guys, 12 with the rest day. Come and check out St. Louis, and don't spend all your time in the Central West End. It's fabulous, but also, and it has Forest Park right next to the neighborhood, but there's so much to do in St. Louis, and, chess, beer, and baseball. That's what we do.
That's what St. Louis is.
Yeah. Well, we're still waiting on an update to get our champion in the studio, Jeffrey Zhang, and hopefully we get him shortly. Oh, he's
looks like
someone
they're
needs
still
to get
analyzing.
him out of there.
This looks familiar. I think we're actually looking at something like this. And yeah, this is the one that I thought might be a draw, because King of 6 here. Looks like Ray is thinking about playing it. Maybe he... Oh, no, okay. A lot of hand motions, Ben. I'm not so good at sign language, but... yeah, endgames like this are some of the ones that I thought were drawn. And, suddenly, all right, the kings are shifting. The kings are shifting, the pawns are shifting. Oh my goodness.
No, the value of a post-mortem after a particular game like this is actually, it would be useful to us when he gets down here, because he'll have that foresight coming in to talk to you.
He'll definitely know what's going on. And wow, I'm not sure how they would have achieved this position. Oh, I guess they're looking at what would happen if White had captured that pawn on f4. Certainly would have been interesting. Yeah, we actually saw 2 decisive games coming from exchange slot positions today. So maybe the reputation of that opening is starting to turn around.
What are you gaining from any other insight from what they're looking at on the board?
Let's see. So, yeah, I'm not actually sure how they got here with White having these 3 pawns. I guess they were considering the move e takes f4 for White, and then instead of recapturing, Black could actually maybe get the king further into the position here. And so, yeah, White seems to be using the bishop to control the f3 pawn as well as, keep that a pawn corralled. So making use of, the bishop's long-range, capabilities is definitely something White would have liked to do here. But yeah, I'm not sure how they got to the position. This looks even more winning for White to my eyes, because he is just up 3 pawns to 2 on that king side now. If he can get his king into the game, especially, that should be it. I think what they're doing now is analyzing positions in their heads, something that players like me strive for. But unfortunately, I think we're no match for these two at being able to. Evaluate these complicated endgames without even putting it on the board.
Absolutely not. So to put things in perspective, these 2 players are 2 floors up from us, and it's very difficult to get someone into the tournament hall to actually send Jeffrey down, because this is a big internationally rated event, and as such, you cannot have cell phones in the tournament hall.
That's true.
So if someone...
Not so easy to contact them up there.
Someone actually has to walk up there, and, it's a Sunday, it's a beautiful day, and we don't have a lot of personnel here at the club, but yeah, we might need to take like a short break here or something and send someone up ourselves to get the champ, because we certainly need to talk to him. And Jeffrey, going back to the junior championships of old here at the chess club, back when Ben and Aviv were hosting, we've really seen Jeffrey Zhang grow up here at the club.
That's true, yeah.
and he's become pretty well spoken.
Yeah, he's a regular here. I think I actually remember his first interview, and he's kind of very timid talking to Maurice. I think, was it Maurice? It feels like it was Maurice. But,
Well, for a U.S. championship, it probably was.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. Very timid, kind of not so forthcoming in his analysis of his game. But yeah, he's definitely one to talk about his games now and give us some insight into what he's thinking and especially what he's feeling during these events, because it can be very psychologically pressing to be playing in these huge marathon tournaments where every round is of the utmost importance and you're right up near the top and you have to keep playing well in order to secure that title like he did today. And so it's definitely interesting to get his insights into how he's handling all aspects of this Spring Classic tournament.
Well, while we're waiting on the champ, we were talking about some upcoming programming on the St. Louis Chess Club YouTube channel. One of the items that a lot of you may not know about, there's a big match coming up on April 12th.
That's true.
And it's going to be
is true.
Something I like to call the strongest expert-level chess match in St. Louis Chess Club
Absolutely.
history.
So I can talk a little bit about that.
Go right ahead.
I might have some insight into this match.
Go right ahead.
It's actually going to be a match that I am playing against famed Jonathan Schrantz of Chess Openings Explained. And so we've both been doing quite a bit of prep, I feel, for this match. There's going to be a lot of build-up, a lot on the line. We're both going to go all in, I think, Ben, is going to be the title of this match, as will be what the players are doing, putting it all on the line. I've got to tell you, if I lose this match, I don't think I'm ever going to live down the pure shame of it, Ben. And I don't think Jonathan's looking to go over easy, but hopefully, I can take him down come April 12th. We're going to be playing 2 rapid games, I believe, something around the vicinity of 30+0, and then we're going to follow that up with 4 blitz games. And
You don't have any increment or delay in your games?
Yeah, it's not set just yet, Ben, but
Okay.
the plan right now is no increment, no delay. It's going to get crazy once we get down to time scrambles, but that's the way it should be.
Now, I know that you and Jonathan, you might have different ideas about what you want in this match. You guys still have to come to the bargaining table and sign an agreement on the format.
It's
and all
true.
that?
Contracts have not been signed yet, but definitely April 12th. That's the day to look out for. I will be here. Jonathan will be here. Hopefully, Elshan Muradiabadi will be here doing live commentary over the match to let you know his thoughts on our expert level chess, and should be a lot of fun. I'm
Well, I
looking forward
hear
to
that
it.
Jonathan is actually training with grandmasters for this match.
He might be. I've heard rumors, but I've got some people in my corner as well, Ben. Definitely had Dennis LaRue helping me out doing some training. He has some very interesting ideas on the way to prepare for a match, and I've got to admit, Ben, we clashed sometimes, but we've come through it now, and I'm happy to have gone through the experience with Dennis.
Are you worried because Dennis has actually just lost publicly live on the YouTube channel? He
Yes.
lost a blitz bounty, which traditionally was Kummer playing a small child. The concept has morphed just a little bit into
Yeah.
Dennis playing a competent opponent. But still, it's worrisome, right?
Turned into Dennis playing a medium-sized child, we'll say, in Jacob Sanders, and he did actually, unfortunately, lose that match in Armageddon, which made me lose a lot of faith in Dennis. I really felt like if he can't even beat Jacob Sanders, how am I going to beat Jonathan Schrantz with him in my corner? But
Sounds like there's some trouble in paradise here.
a little bit, Ben. A little bit. It's really a shame to see one of the chess club's finest go down in such a manner. But he fought hard. He fought well. He took 2 games in the regular event and only lost in the tiebreak Armageddon, which is slightly more understandable.
Well, hey, Julian Prolaco has just joined the chat,
All right.
and he says, LOL.
Yes.
Thanks,
I
Julian.
Agree. I wonder what Jeffrey Zhang is up to, though, Ben.
Yeah,
Any word?
There's still all right, guys. We're gonna
right.
need to get someone up there
Yeah.
and pull him away from the board, kicking and screaming.
Back to the middle game. Oh, and more grandmasters seem to be coming over.
Who is that
interested
from
in
behind? I
the
can't even
tournament.
tell who that
It's
is.
difficult to say. I want to say that might be Sorokin, but
No, I don't think it's Sorokin.
no.
All right, so I
Like
understand
the
we
top.
do have our very own chess club employee, Emily Trask, up for the very important task of pulling the champion away from the board and getting him into the studio.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. We can only, go on and on and on about my match for so long. Then.
Yeah, well, we have a little bit more. Hey, they're getting up. Oh, it's
All
good
right.
stuff. Good stuff. All right, so he has all the answers to life, and he'll have all the answers for you. But before he gets down here, got to tell you, the Grand Chess Tour 2019 is coming up. It begins in May. The very first event is the Côte d'Ivoire Rapid and Blitz, a brand new event on the tour. It's the second annual CIV Invitational and Blitz. I think Hungaski and I did last year's. It was a lot of fun. I'm sure everyone watched. The best players in Africa. It was actually a really fun event. And this time it's going to be the best players in the world. And that kicks off in May. For more information on that, grandchesstour.org. Okay. So we have Jeffrey Zhang ready to come in here
Alright.
for an interview. So we're going to bring him in.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's nothing going on in the hall. It's empty.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just transition out this way.
Here we see
Keep it rolling,
the
Caleb. Keep it
remains
rolling.
of the tournament hall. That is, of course, where the players have been spending the last week and a half in our beautiful boardroom with some snacks there in the kitchen that you can see. But it's been a great time here at the Spring Classic. I think the tournament went pretty smoothly. It's good to see it's all wrapped up now. And all right, so yeah. Joining me now is Jeffrey Zhang. We're getting him just hooked up here after his big win and extended Porous Modem into the game. So how are you feeling, Jeffrey, after this last round?
Obviously I'm very happy, quite relieved, honestly. I felt actually in the tournament I didn't play very well, so I just feel extremely fortunate to have a good result.
Wow, yeah. You did end up with quite a good score, however, but what were your thoughts on this last game specifically? It looked kind of unclear for a while, even once you got up that extra piece, whether or not you could actually win that end game. What were your thoughts?
Well, the thing is, out of the opening, I had a very good position at one point, and then somehow I just didn't really know what I was doing, and quickly I think I just lost most of my advantage.
Okay.
But he let me get this ending, which is very pleasant. Probably it should be a draw, but it's not easy for black.
Wow.
So, but yeah, once we got this Meyer piece ending, I knew from the beginning that it would be very messy, very unclear.
Okay.
And even now, after we played and after we analyzed, I still don't know if it's a win or a draw.
Wow. All right. Do you want to take me through the game here?
Yeah, sure.
See what's going on. So yeah, of course, Exchange Slav. Were you preparing to play the Exchange Slav today? Did you know that going in, if you faced something like D5?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was the plan. But yeah, knight h5. I didn't. Maybe I know this move, but somehow I wasn't ready for it. Perhaps the most critical try is queen takes b7, maybe.
Sure.
But and after knight a5, queen c7, knight takes f4, probably queen d8, rook d8, ef, and okay, rook b8.
Yeah.
I have a pawn up, but I think he has some good compensation. Two bishops.
Definitely.
I decided to go for a more mild approach.
Yeah. So bishop b5.
But after bishop g3, instead of knight g3, I think he should have just played g5 here.
Wow. Yeah. So the idea would simply be to prevent this knight h4
Exactly.
idea.
Just stop knight h4, and he doesn't. My bishop has no square, so he doesn't really need to hurry to take the bishop.
Interesting. So how might white continue here? Would there be
I
any
think bishop b2.
bishop e2, maybe moving this knight, and an eventual f3 to give this bishop f2, or not so much?
I think, bishop b2 moved the knight, forced the knight to decide, because if he takes on g3, maybe the structure is good.
Interesting.
And again, if I take on b7 here, it's It's actually a better version of the other line because he goes knight a5, queen c7, knight g3, queen d8. I think he takes with king now.
Okay.
King d8, hg3. I feel it's a better version because he has e5 covered now, so there's not even any knight e5.
Oh, okay.
So
Well,
I don't
interesting,
think-
yeah. So definitely not going to take on
Yeah,
d7.
I wouldn't have gone for this.
Yeah.
But-
So, yeah, instead this knight g3 move.
Yeah, I was
which,
happy to see
yeah,
this.
gave you quite a bit of pressure on the h file, right?
I think so because now it's not so easy for him. I think he should have played g5 anyway. Still, I mean, just stop
Yeah.
knight h4.
It seemed like this knight h4 move gave you, quite a lot of chances
I think
in
so.
this game.
Yeah.
So yeah, so bishop g6 instead, which you think is maybe kind of a huge mistake because it led to.
I wasn't sure, but all I was sure I just liked my position here after knight h4,
Sure.
bishop f7, bishop d3.
So yeah, some nasty threats here, right?
Yeah,
we
the
were
problem is
noticing
knight
some
g6,
knight
yeah.
g6 ideas.
So I think he's forced to go f5.
Right.
And now I spent a long time here because I can play something simple like knight f3 and it's a better position. But I decided to get a little bit aggressive with g4, trying to
Right.
punish.
Yeah, still trying to break open this diagonal for the same ideas, right?
Yeah, so if he takes, there's knight g6, but there were two interesting possibilities. So there's g5, first of all, knight f3, fg, and the idea is knight g5.
Yes, and so
Yeah, if he
leaving the
recaptures.
b7 pawn behind with the fork if black were to take here.
Correct.
And
And
so what do you think?
I mean, he has two tries, but they both fail. So I thought knight b4 was a try, I mean, to attack the bishop, protect the pawn. But now I have queen a4 check.
Okay.
b5, and bishop takes b5, takes, and he can't hang on to everything.
Right, this bishop hangs in the ends.
So that's
yeah,
about
instead-
g5. There's also bishop e7.
hmm
Now I wanted gf5,
Right, and if
bishop
takes
h4, fe6, and I sacked a piece, but it's hard because all of his pieces are hanging once again.
right.
I thought he should try to take on e6,
Take on
queen
e6.
b7, and everything's just very loose, so it's hard to defend. I mean, g7 is also hanging.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So-
So we saw g6 instead, right?
Yeah.
So
So
you
I
thought
think,
this might be forced?
I think, yeah, probably he had to go g6 because I didn't think the lines worked.
So you took
So I
on
took-
f5, took on f5, and now knight f3.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
were you sure on this move? Or?
no, I wasn't sure. I mean, this is the moment where, I mean, I felt I was clearly better, but I just completely lost the direction.
Yeah, can I ask you if you consider g4 here?
I did consider g4, but I thought now bishop e7,
Yeah, and then takes on f5.
the similar line, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
bishop h4.
And here I thought there was this interesting move, rook takes h4.
Rook h4, okay, but queen h4,
Hit queen b7.
castle.
Okay. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. I guess you're down in exchange after queen takes c6?
Yeah, I'm down in exchange. I have a couple of pawns, I guess. But my king is a bit weak, so I'm not sure this is that clear.
Right, interesting.
I thought, okay, instead of rook h4, maybe you should play fg. I think this is what I was looking at. fg.
Mhm.
Probably hg,
Yes, there's some. Okay.
queen b7. Yeah, it was a little bit too unclear for me to enter.
Right, definitely some complicated.
Maybe it was
variations
good. Yeah, I'm not sure.
there. Yeah. So yeah, you just decided knight f3 instead.
Yeah,
just to
now
avoid all
I
the
keep it
complications.
simple,
Should be
yeah.
pleasant for you, right?
That's what I thought, but it turned out to be not so easy because he goes
Interesting.
bishop d6.
Right.
And originally, I didn't want a castle. I wanted to play something like knight a4, try to attack some stuff.
Yeah, get some pressure on the d7
Exactly,
pawn, right?
yeah. But I was afraid of f4 after.
Knight f4, f4.
And I thought, again, it's getting very messy. Like queen b7, knight b4. And, yeah, probably it's just unclear, I think, because he takes next.
Yeah, interesting. One other move that we were considering here was maybe this knight g5 idea.
I
Once
looked
again.
at this one too, but queen g5,
Mhm.
queen b7, and castle again. Queen c6, queen g2.
Interesting. Yeah. So.
Although, I guess king e2 is a good move. But, still not clear. Bishop g3.
Okay.
Because I think I have to defend with the h rook, and then, I mean, he has ideas here.
Right. Definitely.
Like
See
rook
it.
c8, maybe rook e8, maybe g5. So yeah, quite a few ideas.
Yeah. Definitely some complex variations. But yeah. So maybe these are, and these lines might be where some of the chances kind of slipped away. Do you think?
Maybe I feel like something worked for me, but I didn't see it.
Yeah. Definitely. Black has a lot of counter tries. So instead of all that, just castles.
Yeah, castle. But after castles, I feel like my advantage was just slipping away move by move because somehow I need to put pressure. Like he has a lot of weak. I mean, d5 is weak, and there's some weak squares, but I didn't see how to take advantage. I mean,
Right.
I tried.
Interesting.
Again, if I go knight a4, there's f4. I mean, I was considering this queen b7, knight b4, bishop b1, fe. But, like, it just looks dangerous. Rook b8, queen a4.
Right.
There's even queen e8. Yeah, this is... I mean, queen a7, queen e8 with the double attack.
Yeah.
It's
So
just not possible.
yeah, a lot of weaknesses after f4, right?
Yeah, that's why I felt I have to stop f4, so I went knight e2.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
But
and
now...
so maybe you're playing against this bishop, if I understood correctly.
That's what I was trying to do, yeah. But I think he played very optimally, just knight a5, queen goes back, and queen f6. And
okay.
I didn't really see a plan for me. Because actually his plan is quite clear. He wants to play g5 somewhere and start some kingside
Right.
action.
Yeah, he's got his pieces well placed, right?
So, yeah, I played queen a4, which is kind of desperate, actually. I don't really know what it does, because he probably should have just played knight c6 here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know what I'm doing, because, okay, I planned queen b3, but he can just play rook a b8, for example, and he's threatening g5, and I think I already prefer his position now.
Interesting, yeah.
Because I just don't know what I can do.
There wouldn't be any way to attack this pawn immediately.
I didn't see it. I mean, knight
'cause, yeah,
f4 is an idea.
Can he just take and take, maybe?
He can, yeah, he can.
Yeah, so, interesting.
So this, I mean, I really wasn't sure what to do.
Right. Yeah, but he played knight c4 instead, so...
Knight c4 is also fine, I think. So, but after I go queen c2,
Mhm.
he shouldn't have gone back. I mean, he can just play rook a c8, for example. Very logical. And maybe he was afraid of b3,
Okay.
but I think he just goes bishop a3. Because
Sure.
I don't think I can take the knight because my bishop gets trapped. Like bc4, dc4.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, yeah, my bishop just gets trapped, so I didn't even think this was
Wow.
possible.
Yeah, definitely interesting variation. There wouldn't be a rook b1 here, trying to get some kind of double attack?
Yeah, so I guess he'll just pick up the bishop.
Sure. And then maybe...
Because he has bishop c4 ideas, I'm just
Right.
not sure. Maybe here is good, yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. This would definitely be some interesting stuff.
That's why, yeah, I was very happy when he went knight a5.
So he just came back instead. Okay.
And now, yeah, this is the moment where I think I made a good practical decision to play knight e5.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, this was an interesting pawn stack, right? It lets your pieces into c7.
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, he's forced to take, queen c7. And now, I'm almost sure that it's equal here, but it looks not trivial for black.
Yeah, definitely a lot of active pieces, right? So you played rook f c8 and traded off one pair of rooks.
Yeah, he tried to force things off with d4, but probably it put his position in some risk. So,
Okay.
yeah, we got this forcing line.
Right.
This is all forced, I think. Knight 6 takes. He has to play a5, b5. And, yeah, maybe here was the critical moment. We were discussing briefly bishop d5 first
Mm-hmm.
to try to uncoordinate my pieces, but I think rook d6, and bishop b7, I guess.
Yeah, and maybe you can get a little bit more active.
Yeah, rook d7, bishop c4. Yeah, it looks probably not lost, but very unpleasant.
Right, understandable. Yeah, so he went for the more forcing line.
Yeah, he
in the
played
game, right, with
a4,
and
d6,
yeah.
rook b8 is forced, bishop a6. Yeah, now the point was if he goes bishop d5. Now there's rook c8. So
Right, and
takes, a3, bishop e6.
yeah, this bishop e6 move was a cool tactic to
Yeah.
kind of force the endgame.
But more or less, I think we were getting this ending, regardless.
Right, so yeah, king g7
King
instead.
g7, b7, bishop d5. Yeah, bishop e6, rook c8. Now, yeah, there was this idea to try a3.
Oh, interesting.
Actually, this is why I had to kick the bishop on d5 first.
Okay.
Because the point is rook b8, a2, rook a8. He queens and bishop f1.
Yeah. and then-
Because if his bishop is on d5, he could take on a8. But with bishop on
interesting.
e6,
Okay.
now
See it.
this line works.
Yeah, the queen has to move and then you just queen. Yeah, interesting line. We missed that one.
So yeah, that's why he has to give it up. I mean, there is another way to give up the piece. So
Mhm.
instead of bishop e6, he could try to take on b7 to play this one.
Right, and then
Rook c7, king f6, I guess, bishop b7. But it's hard to say. I think the one he tried was a better option because
okay. Yeah, with the rooks on, it should be easier to keep this pawn.
I feel it is.
Okay.
Yeah, to keep it under control.
So yeah, he went for the pure bishop down endgame.
Yeah, and this was just really, really hard for me to
Right.
understand. Bishop a6, king e5. But yeah, this was a critical moment. I feel maybe I went wrong.
With f3?
Yeah, I feel f4 feels correct.
Right.
I
And-
thought king d5, bishop d3. Because now, I mean, ideally I just try to keep as many pawns on the board. So when
Mhm.
I fix f4, it feels like this should be the way. I think I was worried about a3, I think.
Yeah, so
Some forcing line. Bishop b1, king c4. Bishop a2 is forced. King c3.
c3, okay.
Yeah, he just wants to win the bishop
Right.
off immediately.
Of
But
course.
I'm almost sure this is winning. So I go king f2, king b2, bishop g8, let's say. a2, takes. Now I just have to be careful, but I'm almost sure this is winning.
Is there some e4 here?
That's what I considered. Maybe e4 I didn't like because there was some line, for example, g4, fe4, e4, fe4, g4.
Mhm.
I think I calculated h5, and maybe I thought this was a draw.
Interesting. If
But
f5 here?
I'm probably miscalculated because f5 is probably just winning because
Okay.
I queen with check. I mean, I maybe only calculated gh f5, and I don't queen with check, and that's a draw. But I missed f5.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, this
Yeah.
this king pawn ending I should have worked out. It should be winning.
So you chose the more flexible kind of f3 instead, right?
Yeah, I missed. I think I just didn't understand because I missed after f4.
Mhm.
I maybe failed to consider it because I thought I had e4.
Yeah, giving this
this-
pass pawn. but
Yeah,
then-
the connected pass pawn. Thought it should be winning, but it's actually a dead draw. So he just plays g5, and the point is, it's simply a fortress once he achieves h5 and g4. He goes g4,
Mhm.
and then he wants g3.
Yeah, g3 and then h4,
And I can't-
right?
and I cannot.
Yeah, that locks the king down to the king side.
Exactly.
Yeah, this looks pretty problematic.
Yeah, and I mean I realized it too late, so now I had to go king f2,
Okay.
a3, bishop c4, and now we were analyzing g5. Although I think all the lines are similar because we're getting this kind of position one way or another. So let's
Mhm.
just continue for now.
Yeah, so with
H5,
h5.
takes, g3. Although actually, okay, let's see. So, let's follow the game and then return. So
Sure.
G3, King F5, Bishop A2, G5, King E3. The key point is if he goes H4.
Yeah, this is what I was expecting, but
The problem is, I think I start with a check, Bishop B1, King E5, and now I go King F2, because now the G4 square opened up, so I thought I can just bring the king to G4, and I'm not sure how he stops me. For example, King D4, King G2, King E3, and Bishop A2. And I believe it's Zugzwang because if he plays King E2, it's F4, and the F1
Okay.
goes. And if he moves the king away, I go King H3, King G4.
right.
If he plays, let's say, H3, I just
Yeah,
take it.
takes
King
takes.
F3 and move the bishop anywhere. And it's lost, yeah. So it's always going to be Zugzwang. For example, King E3, King G4, King F2, Bishop A2, King G2, and just triangulate. So Bishop somewhere, King moves, and Bishop D5.
Right. Cutting off all the squares.
And yeah, that was the issue.
Yeah,
so
instructive stuff. Cutting this king off. So
that's why H4 doesn't work.
right,
But
okay. Was there
actually,
any-
it's probably lost because King E5, let's say, in the game, right?
Mhm.
I just Bishop B1. So the problem is, if he goes King D5, I think F4 works now.
Interesting.
If he takes, I take with King and then pick up the pawn.
And there's no.
If he plays G4, I
Okay.
go Bishop A2. And I think I just bring the king. Because if my king gets to F5, it's easy.
Right. Okay.
And H4 never works. So yeah, this, I guess it was winning now. If-
Yeah, just for my sake,
Mhm.
I was thinking about H4.
Yeah,
here, maybe.
H4 I take on G5.
Take on G5. Takes.
And King F3. And I'm in time to do everything.
Okay. So yeah, takes. And the king comes to H4. All right.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So that's why maybe this position is already lost because he can't stop my king from just going up the board.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's why
So after king F6, it's a lot easier, right? Your king
I
gets
think
in
so.
and then-
My king just
Yeah, and then you're always in time to stop this H4 pawn.
if H4 I always just taking King F4.
So yeah,
So-
interesting. You wanted to come back
Yeah,
to
I
some
wanted
point?
to come back because this is what we were trying to figure out. Is so yeah, I guess after H5 it's losing. I think. Although I mean it's just very hard to say. But we're analyzing G5 here.
Sure.
The idea is now if I take on F4, he goes GF4,
Okay.
and I might be wrong again, but I thought this position was a draw because he just keeps my king in the box.
Yeah, there's one idea that I thought was kind of interesting here is maybe this G3 move.
I think G4 is a better version because G4,
G4?
you kind of force him to
Okay.
take. No, this one I thought was easily winning. I thought you should take the other pawn.
Of course. Okay.
Take this one and H5. And yeah, this is actually kind of, we're reaching the critical position, which is, like, let's say Bishop A2,
Mm-hmm.
King F5, Bishop B1, King E5, F4,
Sure.
let's say takes, King F6, and yeah, this is kind of the critical position where I mean, we didn't see how white can break this fortress. The idea is black kind of just sits.
Yeah, and then whenever you
never-
move the king here.
I can never win the pawn because A2, King F4.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is maybe the key position. Had he seen
Interesting.
this, he could have drawn.
Well, yeah, definitely a complicated endgame
Yeah.
with a lot of forks. Yeah, so overall, you think maybe this H5 move was not the best try for Ray, even if the other endgames are maybe not, totally drawn, but regardless, G5 was a better try, you think?
Yeah, as of now, I think H5 was the decisive mistake, but again, the ending is very unclear. I mean, it's possible that like all everything that I said is wrong. So it's
Right.
actually
You know, it's a very complicated endgame, right? But yeah, with that in mind, you know, I want to ask you about the rest of the tournament. You said you didn't think you played as well, but you know, you had some very good scores overall. You know, any games you're particularly proud of this event?
Well, my best game was definitely the win against Li Kuan Lian.
Yeah.
But I mean, even that one wasn't very clean. I mean, I had a good position, and probably it was also very shaky. So
Right.
And my first win against Bach was kind of ridiculous. I mean, that one was just really lucky. So yeah, and I had maybe a lot of bad positions that I drew. So that's why I felt just very fortunate.
Well, looking forward to the U.S. Championships. You'll be playing a lot of chess again very soon.
Yeah.
You know, any big goals this year? Any plans to actually make a good shot at the title, or
the title that might be a bit ambitious, but the main goal for me is to qualify for the World Cup. So I'll just need to put in a good result.
Yeah, awesome. Well, congratulations again, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for joining me here in the studio, and I wish you the best of luck in the U.S. Championships to come.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Welcome to the chess capital of the United States. The St. Louis Chess Campus in the heart of the vibrant Central West End has established itself as a premier global destination for chess and is comprised of two unique nonprofit institutions. The Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis is recognized as the top chess facility in the world and plays host to all major tournaments, including the U.S. Chess Championships and the Sinkfield Cup, one of the strongest chess tournaments globally. Tournaments are broadcast online to more than 150 countries, led by an expert commentary team of grandmasters. The Chess Club is an educational organization committed to promoting the game of chess, with a specific focus on bringing the benefits of chess to children throughout the St. Louis area. Research shows children who play chess exhibit improved analytical skills and increased confidence. The Chess Club is highly engaged with the local community, bringing scholastic chess programs to more than 100 schools, providing hundreds of classes each week. Directly across the street from the Chess Club is the World Chess Hall of Fame. This one-of-a-kind cultural institution invites visitors to experience chess in imaginative ways and is home to the U.S. and World Chess Halls of Fame. Cutting-edge exhibitions feature rare, historic chess artifacts paired with world-class art. Innovative programming explores the intersection of chess, art, and culture. Visitors can enjoy interactive programs designed around the exhibitions and monthly music in the galleries. The World Chess Hall of Fame is nothing you expect and everything you love. 3 different galleries and a premier gift shop highlight the culture, history, and creativity behind the game. Come visit, play chess, leave enriched. To learn more about the St. Louis Chess Campus, visit stlchesscampus.org.
Well, everyone, it's been quite the ride. Welcome back to St. Louis for our wrap-up of the 2019 Spring Chess Classic. Ben Simon here, along with Caleb Denby.
Yeah.
And Caleb, what did you gather from your interview with the champ, Jeffrey Zhang?
I knew going into the interview that this endgame was extremely complicated, and I left feeling the same way. But it sounds like, this is far more complicated than either of us reckons, and even the top grandmasters here don't know entirely what was going on. Although,
well, someone in the chat was out there in the next room while you were doing the interview, and Jeffrey he was thinking about the position the entire time. It's kind of like a faraway gaze, and someone said it looks like he's contemplating life or like existence or something. I was like, yeah, it does. It's a position like that might warrant that type of thinking and contemplation.
right.
So let's take one final glance at our standings. First of all, in Group A, the Masters Division, Jeffrey Zhang, once again, your champion, the only 2-time seasonal classic champ, and $6,000 is his prize. And then in Group B, we have Baijin Shi, who also finished with 6 points. He leaves with $4,000, and it was great hearing from him today as well. Okay, well, that does it for the 2019 Spring Chess Classic. We want to thank the people that helped us out, Emily Trask and Ryan Chester. Tammy Hyde was the streamer, and the world's greatest production B team, Danny Machuca, the technical director, and, of course, Isaac Schrantz, graphics and audio man.
Yeah, it was great. Great show. Congratulations again to both Jeffrey and Baijin Shi on a well-played tournament, walking away with the title. With that in mind, what do we have coming up, Ben?
In 10 days, the U.S. Championship. That is the next time we're going to be with you. I think most likely we're going to have Spanish commentary for that event as well, and you can see it all at uschesschamps.com. You know, that website, I don't know if you could tell by the name, that was invented for the U.S.
I believe it was.
Yeah. And now we use it for everything, so it's great. It's one-stop shop for all the competitive events you'll see online. Thanks, everyone, for joining us in the YouTube chat. For Grandmaster Amon Hamilton, he's Caleb Denby. My name is Ben Simon. And until the U.S. Championship in 10 days, we say so long from the Show Me State. This has been a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.